Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see second part, what if Deku became an inside man and turned heroes into villains. Here is short summary. Midoriya Izuku was a hero fanboy, all the way. He still had his doubts over how perfect heroes were, but that didn't stop him from dreaming. Even if he was quirkless, and everyone said he couldn't, he still hoped he could become a hero. All that changed the day his best friend told him to jump off a roof. He almost died by a sludge villain. His number one hero crushed his dreams and left him alone on a rooftop, and all his faith in hero society shattered. He now had a new dream. If society said he couldn't be a hero, he would be the one to destroy it instead. And what better way to bring down a system than from within? But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Today, we'll be doing rescue hero training. Aizawa announced with his usual bored expression, gaining enthusiastic reactions from his students. Looks like it'll be a lot of work this time, too, Kaminari sighed. Idiot, this is the duty of a hero, Kirishima exclaimed. My arms are ready to rumble. No one can beat me in the water, Hiro. Asui Suyu, or Su, as she had requested everyone to call her, added with excitement. Izuku was too tired to react, so he remained silent. He barely slept the previous night, contemplating what he had witnessed, and his following conversation with the hero killer. On one hand, Izuku agreed with Stain's views about the fake heroes, and having to do something to change the way the hero society worked. He even ended up rambling on his own thoughts on the matter, and his opinions on the number one hero. On the other hand, though, he didn't think that actually killing all the pro-heroes was the correct solution. Sure, many of them had only entered the field just for money and fame, but they actually ended up helping people. And others hadn't been that bad, either. Izuku thought murder was a bit extreme. Besides, killing wasn't right. Right, Himiko also killed people sometimes, but this was different. Hey, I'm not done, Aizawa interrupted his thoughts. You can decide if you want to wear your costume or not this time. Some of them will probably limit your abilities. Of course they will, Izuku thought. Many of them were so impractical. He had to talk to some of his classmates about them, especially the girls. He made a mental note to do that after training today. The training will take place off campus, so we're taking the bus. That is all. Start getting ready. And with that, Aizawa left the classroom, the students getting up, too. After they all changed and gathered outside, Iida was instructing everyone to line up and board the bus, having taken his job as class president very seriously. In the bus, Su, who apparently always says whatever comes to mind, sat next to Izuku and bluntly remarked how his quirk was very similar to All Might's. Yeah, it kind of is, Izuku smiled politely, trying not to receive too much attention over it. Well, All Might's quirk never caused him to break his bones, as I recall happening on the entrance exam, Iida thankfully pointed out. Although I must commend you, Midoriya-kun, on managing to overcome your quirk's drawbacks in such a short amount of time, he said while chopping his hands in the usual manner. Izuku had already gotten used to it, but every time he thought about that time he compared Iida's mannerisms to chopping invisible onions, he always had to hold back his laughter. If I may ask, Midoriya-kun, have you always had this problem? Damaging your limbs whenever you activated your quirk? If my memory serves me right, Recovery Girl had to heal both your legs and your right arm, correct? Oh, yeah. Izuku thought he could actually put off this conversation a little while longer, especially since only Iida and Uraraka, and Aoyama, his name was, if he remembers correctly, were in the same testing grounds with him, and saw the effects of his quirk at the time. Really? Kaminari questioned, surprised. I mean, my quirk makes my brain short-circuit if I go over my limit, but breaking bones just by using it sounds really painful. Well, that's actually because, Izuku fiddled with his hands, aiming to look nervous and embarrassed, but also modest about the subject. I may have had my quirk for only a few months. He wasn't looking at his classmates, but from the sudden silence in the whole bus, He could already picture the baffled expressions on his classmates, all of which had probably heard him. What? Everyone exclaimed their surprise on the matter, except for Katsuki, who already knew. He caught a few asking when exactly did he get it, since the entrance exam was a few months ago, too. I actually manifested it a few days before the entrance exam. He gave them a small smile, but everyone was even more flabbergasted than before. What? Stay quiet, I'm trying to sleep, Aizawa mumbled from the front seat. After apologizing to their teacher, they all turned back to Izuku. Dude, that is so manly. Hiroshima chimed in. You had your quirk for only a few days and you still got first place. Yeah, that's super cool, Midori. Ashido babbled. Midori. Wait, if you only had a quirk for that long, didn't you basically grow up quirkless? Sue asked, always to the point. That was another thing he hoped he wouldn't have to talk about so soon, but oh well. Everyone turned quiet as they pondered the question and realized what that implied. Yeah, Izuku glanced at Katsuki, curious about his reaction. He wasn't looking at Izuku, and looked incredibly uncomfortable, and kind of guilty. Good, he should be. He tuned out his classmates' sympathetic words, about how strong he was, what he must have endured, how hard it must have been. He didn't like being pitied. He wasn't that fragile kid anymore, a weak, useless Deku. Yes, life was hard. He was bullied, discriminated against, and talked down by kids, teachers and heroes alike. But he got through it. He may have a quirk now, but that's not the reason he got strong and determined. He worked on that by himself. He shed sweat, blood and tears to get to where he was now, and he was damn proud of himself for it. No quirk would make up for that. Instead of voicing his thoughts, however, he smiled politely. He thanked his classmates for their kind words, and assured them he was perfectly happy with his quirk, and his eventual control over it. At some point, they must have realized that being the center of attention was making him uncomfortable, because they resumed the conversations they were having before, and moved on. It's nice to have a simple augmenting type quirk, though. You can do lots of flashy stuff. Hiroshima pointed out. My hardening's strong against others. He activated his quirk on his right arm to demonstrate, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like much. Now, Izuku may not be a hero fanboy anymore, but he never stopped being fascinated by quirks. Therefore, he didn't have to act being entranced by the display of his classmates' powers, and was free to express his actual thoughts on them, just adding his former habit of associating them with hero work. I think it's really cool. It's a quirk that can definitely pass as a pros. He reassured the redhead. A pros, huh, but you have to think about popularity, too. If we're talking about someone flashy and strong, it's gotta be Todoroki and Bakugo, though, right? Katsuki was incredibly expressive on the matter, tch, while Todoroki was further back in the bus and didn't seem to hear them. If he did, he made no attempt to show it. Izuku thought that he must have heard comments about how cool his quirk was a million times. Bakugo's always mad, though, so he doesn't seem like he'll be popular, hero. Sue's comment was enough to gain a reaction. What the hell, you wanna fight? See, Izuku couldn't help but snicker at Sue's reaction. We barely know each other, and yet he's already made abundantly clear the unpleasantness of his steamed turd of a personality, Kaminari taunted him. Izuku burst out laughing, along with a few of his classmates, namely Uraraka, who looked like she was having the time of her life. Ha, what's with that vocabulary, you bastard? I'll kill you. As Iida and Yaomomo were commenting on their vulgar language, Aizawa announced they had reached their destination. Izuku was surprised to see the space hero, 13, welcoming them to the facility. The moment they stepped inside, the students were all amazed by the size of it. 13 opened their arms as they presented the place. A shipwreck, a landslide, a fire, a windstorm, and many more. It is a training ground that I made with different types of accidents and disasters. Welcome to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, USJ for short. Wow, it's like Universal Studios Japan. Literally, Kaminari pointed out, everyone agreeing. 13, where's All Might? Aizawa asked the rescue hero, quietly. He was supposed to meet us here. About that, They came closer to Aizawa, obviously to tell him something the students shouldn't hear, but Izuku was close to them, and he could already guess the reason for the hero's absence. It looks like he did too much hero work on his way to the school and ran out of time, so he's resting in the lounge, they whispered. Izuku mentally rolled his eyes. Of course he was. That's the height of irrationality, Aizawa sighed. Anyway, let's begin without him. Before we begin, 13 started, let me say one thing, or two, or three. They proceeded to explain the nature of their quirk, black hole. I can up. Kaminari snorted, anything and turn it to dust. You've used your quirk to save people from all kinds of disasters, right? Uraraka, an obviously big fan of theirs, chimed in. Yes, but it's a power that can kill easily. Everyone turned quiet. Some of you have quirks like that, right? Oh, Izuku could see where this was going. He didn't expect to hear anything of the sort, if he was being honest. In a superhuman society, personal quirks have been certified and strictly regulated, so that doesn't seem to be a problem at first glance. However, don't forget that there are many quirks that can easily kill, or seriously maim. Izuku glanced at Katsuki, who looked away when he noticed, with one wrong step. With Aizawa's physical fitness test, you found out about the possibilities of your own hidden powers, and with All Might's person-to-person combat training, you experienced the danger of using those powers against others. Yeah, Izuku thought, because the buffoon didn't teach us proper quirk training before making us fight each other. This class is a fresh start. You shall learn how to use your quirks to save people's lives. You do not have powers so you can harm others. Well, some pro-heroes, and students, Izuku subtly glared at Katsuki again, satisfied to see him look guilty, really needed to listen to this speech. I hope you leave this class with the understanding that you have powers in order to help others. 13 bowed dramatically and concluded their speech. That is all. Thank you for listening. The students cheered, and Izuku joined them. He was actually content to see teachers talk about things like that. It was some version of, the quirk doesn't make the person, that Izuku longed to hear his whole life. All of a sudden, the lights around the facility crackled and shut off, before a purple warp appeared at the plaza in the center of the USJ's plaza. Before anyone could react, Aizawa turned more serious than Izuku had ever seen him before. Gather together and don't move. 13. Protect the students. What's that? Kirishima asked. From the warp, that had expanded over the whole plaza, people started appearing. Is this like the entrance exam? Has the lesson already started? Don't move, Aizawa instructed, and put on his goggles. These are real villains. Well, Izuku noticed some villains, who, once they appeared, they didn't move towards the heroes and students. Among them was a pale person with numerous dismembered hands all over his body, and one on his face, another whose body was seemingly made of purple mist, probably the one with the warp quirk, and a mutant quirked person. They were about as big as All Might, a beak with huge sharp teeth instead of a mouth, but most notably, they had their brain exposed, and their eyes were placed on it. They didn't look exactly human, but in the age of quirks, that wasn't uncommon. The teacher's schedule we received the other day said that All Might was supposed to be here, Izuku heard one of the villains say. The schedule they received, but no one got into the school when the press destroyed the gate. Oh, so it was their doing. The trespassing yesterday was the work of these scumbags after all, huh? Aizawa voiced his thoughts. So, they took advantage of the chaos they caused and got into the building. But if they did, Nezu would know about it and have an emergency shut down. Unless, they never got in, and someone gave it to them instead. Izuku's eyes widened at the thought. Is there a spy in the school? Where is he? Another villain, the one with the hands all over his body, and presumably one of the leaders, questioned. I went through the trouble of bringing this whole crowd, to All Might, the symbol of peace. I can't believe he's not here. I wonder if he'll come if we kill some kids. So, this was a personal grudge. Apparently, it was so important for them to kill the #1 hero, that they would kill 15-year-old students to gain his attention and bring him here. Izuku wondered what would drive a person to orchestrate such a plan, just to kill him. Aizawa, at the threat on his students, immediately activated his quirk, his hair floating and his capture weapon ready to be used. Izuku's classmates were starting to get visibly nervous. Villains. There's no way they could get into a hero school. Sensei. What about the trespasser sensors? Yaomomo asked 13. We have them, of course, but they obviously didn't work. Maybe because the villains teleported here. The warp that appeared should have worked as a teleportation method, Izuku figured. Perhaps they have a quirk that jammed the sensors, like a radio wave type power that interferes with them. Did they only appear here, or around the whole school? Todoroki wondered out loud. Either way, if the sensors aren't responding, that means they have a quirk that can do that. An isolated area separated from the main campus, during a time when a class is supposed to be here. They might be fools, but they're not dumb. Izuku agreed. They must have planned this, specifically to attack All Might in a secluded area, after nullifying the alert system. Aizawa instructed 13 to proceed with the evacuation, and told them to try and contact the school, Kaminari 2, with his electricity quirk. But what are you going to do, Sensei? Izuku asked. With so many villains, even with your erasure quirk, it's not Eraserhead's style to fight so many head-on. You can't be a hero with just one trick, the hero retorted. I'm leaving them to you, 13. And with those words, he rushed towards the sea of villains that had entered the building. 13 guided the students towards the exit, when a deep voice accompanied the sudden appearance of the same purple mist that had brought the villains inside. I'm sorry, but I can't let you go. Everyone stopped in their tracks as the mist villain stood in front of them, his glowing, yellow eyes prominent on their otherwise dark form. Nice to meet you, he said. We are the League of Villains. Izuku almost snorted at the name. It may be presumptuous of us, but we have invited ourselves in, to UA High School, in order to have All Might, the symbol of peace, take his last breath, he explained, rather politely. I believe All Might should have been here. Has there been some kind of change? No one replied. Well, it doesn't matter. I have my own part to play. He spread his mist towards the students and 13, who started using their support gear and quirk to the mist. Black hole, ing everything and turning it to dust. That's an astounding quirk, but you're a rescue hero, you have less battle experience than most heroes. As he spoke, the villain made a warp appear behind the hero, apparently with the mist that they had ed, because the warp started pulling 13 in, like a black hole. He had used their own quirk against them. Those villains knew what they were doing. You turned yourself to dust, he said as 13's costume started disintegrating, presumably along with the back of their body. All of Izuku's classmates watched in horror as they collapsed on the ground. Before anyone had the chance to react, the villain expanded his mist all around the students, as he revealed that his assigned job was to scatter them all, and Izuku found himself high in the air, falling towards a deep body of water. He took a deep breath and shifted his body, diving into the water head first. As he started swimming towards the surface, he saw a villain with a shark-type quirk approach him with incredible speed. He activated Full Cowl, hoping he could use it somewhat effectively in the water, when Sue appeared, kicking the villain away for him, and wrapping Izuku with her tongue, before swimming upwards. She gently elevated Izuku and dropped him on a boat. They must have been warped to the shipwreck zone, then. The villain probably scattered all the students in the various disaster zones, and fight the villains, while the main ones would deal with All Might and the other pro-heroes. Sue then yeeted Mineta, who she had been also dragging with her, to the boat, understandably not really caring about causing him pain. The disgusting excuse for a human was mumbling something about the girl having surprisingly big boobs for a frog, and proceeded to climb on board. Thank you, Sue. No problem, Midoriya-chan. This has turned into a bad situation, though, she sighed. Yeah, Izuku explained his thoughts about the villain orchestrating the media intrusion to get their schedule, but didn't point out his theory about a possible spy. But it's not like they can kill All Might, Mineta exclaimed. Once he arrives, he'll pound those guys. Not if he has run out of time, though, Izuku thought. Mineta-chan, don't you think they would try so hard if they didn't have a way to kill him? I wonder if we'll be able to hold on until All Might arrives, and making it out alive. Mineta, the so brave hero student he was, started crying. Hero. Sue noticed that villains were approaching them from the water, and surrounded the boat. Izuku, once again, played the part of the motivated hero student. It doesn't matter whether All Might comes or not. No matter the reason they want to kill him, or how they think they can do it, we will stop them. He really didn't want to risk dying because a classmate of his couldn't handle the stress of his chosen field. We will fight and win. He looked at his classmates with a determined expression, and hoped they would make it out alive. Chapter text. What do you mean, fight them? Izuku's efforts to be inspiring didn't bear fruit, apparently, because the pervert started freaking out even more. These guys came to kill All Might, right? He wailed. The best plan would be to sit tight and wait for the heroes to come and save us. Izuku gave him a glare that almost shut him up. The fact that a hero student was acting like a helpless baby went untold. He turned to look at the villains in the water, who were obviously ready to attack them. Those guys are clearly assuming we'll fight in the water, he noted. They probably already knew about the facility when they gathered people. They all seem to have quirks that give them an advantage. But so does Sue. He turned to the girl, who nodded. If you think about it, it's strange they would gather information so meticulously, and yet send you to the shipwreck zone. That means they probably don't know our quirks. Which was weird, if the spy theory was true. If they could provide the schedule for today's lessons, they could have easily given a summary of every student's quirk. That's true, hero, the girl exclaimed. If they knew I was a frog, they would probably have thrown me in the fire zone, over there. She pointed to the dome beside the shipwreck zone. They probably separated us so they could overpower us with numbers. So our only advantage is that they don't know our quirks. Izuku looked at the villains, who were still in the water around the boat. The enemies aren't even trying to climb the boat. They are waiting for us to fight them where they have the bigger advantage. They aren't underestimating us, either. I'll tell you more about my quirk, Sue began, when they sat down to form a plan. Izuku wished he had his UA hero analysis notebook with him. She explained the basics about her frog quirk, that he had already gathered from watching her during heroics class, and Izuku gave his. I have strength augmentation. I distribute my quirk across my body evenly, and while it's activated, I can use enough power on my limbs for punches, jumps, kicks and stuff, without any strain on my body. Oh, and my reflexes and maneuverability are enhanced, too. That's really amazing, Midoriya-chan, the frog girl remarked. Thank you. Izuku put on a polite smile, like an embarrassed teenager being complimented by a girl. My quirk lets these. He took a purple ball out of his hair, stick super tight. Depending on how I'm feeling, they can even stick for a whole day. They grow back after I pull them off, but if I pull off too many, I'll start bleeding. And they don't stick to me, they just bounce off. In another situation, Izuku would have probably asked some questions about the grape's quirk. But now was neither the time nor the place to ask about stuff that wouldn't help them in their current predicament. So, Izuku stayed quiet, and so did Sue, making the pervert cry, again, about how his quirk is totally unfit for battle. If it was, and with that attitude, why did you even apply for heroics, dumbass? And how they should have stayed put, like he said earlier. Izuku had no time to groan about his classmates' antics, because a villain had decided they were waiting for too long and used their quirk to smash the boat with a huge hand made of water. I'm getting impatient. Let's end this quickly, the villain said, putting Mineta on a frenzy, as he started maniacally throwing his balls towards the villains. What are you doing? Izuku whisper shouted. They will figure out your quirk. He went to look at the villains' reactions, and was surprised to see they were avoiding touching the balls. They were instead talking about how the boat would sink in less than a minute, and once the students reached the water, it's over for them. Mineta, bless his soul, bawled at this, making Sue question his plan to become a hero, and got a half-ass response about just starting high school, all the while sobbing and shrieking, proving her point. I wish I could have at least touched Yaoyorozu's boobs before I. He didn't get to complete his disgusting sentence, because Izuku gave him a quirkless punch to the jaw. If you ever attempt to do something like this, I won't hesitate to use my quirk on you. He glared at the midget, who nodded frantically out of fear, and heard a quiet, thank you, from the frog girl behind him. He proceeded to explain to his two classmates the plan that had formed in his head, taking into account their quirks and abilities, apart from his own, thankful they both agreed. Izuku then turned his attention to the villains, who were snickering at the kids' reactions and starting to underestimate their abilities. Izuku took this chance to attack. He activated Full Cowl, and jumped off the boat. He released a scream that was bubbling in his throat and, while in the air, punched the air towards the surface of the water where some villains were gathered, causing the water to spread out, at first, and then converge in the center like a whirlpool. All the while, the short asshole was throwing his balls repeatedly towards the water, and they ended up getting pulled in the center, along with all the villains there, causing them to stick together and making them unable to move. Sue then wrapped the two boys with her tongue, and leapt away from the ship, that had almost sunk at that point, thus making their escape. My balls will be sticking them together for at least a couple hours. Mineta proudly exclaimed, looking at Sue with a dreamy look. I could do this more often if it means you use your tongue. He was promptly cut off when Izuku gave him a deadly glare, his teeth audibly clacking as he clenched his mouth shut. Izuku glared at him for a few good seconds, before returning to his cheerful persona and looked at Sue. You were amazing, Sue-chan. You too, Midoriya-chan. But you can be terrifying sometimes, she brought her finger to her chin in thought. Anyway, we should see what to do next. Izuku looked around the establishment. We should make getting help our top priority. It'd be best to follow the shore. He pointed towards the exit, and avoid the central plaza as we head towards the exit. That's true. Aizawa-sensei has drawn many villains to the plaza. They all turned to look at their teacher defeat his enemies one by one, but his movements were getting slower and sloppier. They quietly swam to the shore and stood behind a rock to get a better look at what was happening at the plaza. But there are too many. He will overexert himself protecting us if he keeps up like this, until help arrives. If we could somehow lessen Aizawa-sensei's load. At that moment, the hand villain charged at the teacher and kept him immobilized, until Aizawa's hair fell down, meaning his quirk deactivated. It's hard to see because you keep moving around, but there's an instant when your hair falls, they heard the villain say. That's when you stop an action, and it's getting shorter and shorter. Damn, he was smart. He had been watching the hero while he was fighting his minions, and keeping track of the times between activation and deactivation of erasure. He was waiting for the right time to attack. The villain was gripping Aizawa's left elbow, and must have activated a quirk, because the skin started turning to dust, revealing the muscle underneath. A disintegration quirk, then. Aizawa immediately freed himself and stepped away, grunting in pain. More villains rushed to attack, and the hero was clinging his arm while trying to get away. That quirk isn't suited for long fights against a large group, is it? The villain rasped. Isn't it too different from your usual job? What you're good at is a short fight after a surprise attack, isn't it? Eraserhead was panting, trying to catch his breath, while Izuku watched, thinking of what he should do. Eraser was actually one of the only heroes he respected. He didn't want him to die because of villains who just wanted to kill All Might. Even so, the villain continued, you jumped right in to fight us from the front. Was that to put your students at ease? Aizawa was once again fighting ravenously the villains who kept jumping on him ruthlessly. The heroes in the school still haven't arrived, and Izuku doubted they would. You're so cool, Eraserhead, but I'm not the last boss, you know. The person with the exposed brain, that Izuku saw earlier, had appeared behind the hero, and without warning, they grabbed him and slammed him on the ground. I'll tell you Eraserhead, he's the anti-symbol of peace, the bioengineered Nomu, the hand villain explained. The Nomu opened its mouth and released a deafening screech, before taking Aizawa's, partially disintegrated, arm and snapped it like a twig. It then lifted Aizawa's head by his hair, ready to smash his teacher's face to the ground. Izuku didn't wait to see what else that monster would do to the hero, who was screaming in pain. The other heroes weren't coming. Aizawa would sacrifice himself for students that no one else could protect after he was out of commission. 13 was defeated, and the supposedly hero students were doing nothing to help their teacher. He activated Full Cowl, concentrated one for all on his legs and, Despite the protests of his classmates beside him, he launched himself towards them. He wasn't fast enough, though, because by the time Izuku drew his right hand back, the Nomu had already smashed his teacher's face on the concrete below. With all the power he could muster from his quirk, he punched it in the face, sparing any other maiming Aizawa would have gotten, had Izuku not intervened. The hand dude was scratching himself as he cried out when the Nomu was attacked, and even though it didn't react to the punch, it let go of Aizawa, who collapsed on the ground. It must have a strength or durability quirk. There's no way someone could withstand Izuku's quirk like that. "Hey, Kurogiri," the hand villain asked, presumably the mist villain who had just arrived at the scene, "did you kill 13? Kurogiri explained how he took out the space hero, but couldn't defeat all the students, and one of them even got away. Thank goodness, someone will finally alert the stupid heroes. The other villain was obsessively scratching his neck, murmuring something about turning his subordinate to dust. Meanwhile, the Nomu had charged towards Izuku, who swiftly dodged and gave it a semi-roundhouse, downward kick to the back of its knees, hoping it would lose its balance and fall, but it didn't even budge. Izuku proceeded to attack it relentlessly, but his efforts were fruitless. The Nomu didn't seem to get injured at all during his attacks. On the contrary, it looked like it was absorbing the shock of all his quirked punches and kicks. He would have to find another way to bring it down. As it released a screech and charged at Izuku, who was starting to feel lightheaded from exhaustion and quirk overuse, the teenager heard the raspy villain call it off. "Man, it's game over. Let's go home." He then turned to look at Izuku, who was surprised to see the monster had stopped in its tracks and was standing idly in front of him. "Oh yeah, before we leave, let's smash some of his pride as the symbol of peace." Izuku mentally snorted. Nice choice of words. The villain charged at him, hand outstretched, and Izuku barely dodged to avoid getting touched on his face. His opponent, however, had managed to grab his arm, and Izuku braced himself for the pain that would follow its disintegration, judging from what happened to Eraserhead's elbow. The pain never came. Instead, the villain's hoarse voice sounded, disappointment evident in his tone. "Damn it, you really are cool, Eraserhead." Izuku glanced at the aforementioned hero, who was panting on the ground, holding his broken arm, blood oozing from his forehead and face. He had activated his quirk despite his pain and exhaustion. The green-haired boy took this opportunity to attack the villain in front of him, but was met with the already familiar creature that had stepped in to protect its master. You fight well. But I'm done with you," said Master sneered, and the Nomu raised its fist to punch Izuku, before a crash sounded from the entrance of the building. "It's all right, now. Because I am here." All Might appeared, in his buff form, his usual smile evidently absent from his face. He even seemed angry. "Well," Izuku thought, "took you long enough." If he had managed his time limit right and actually come to his class, instead of resting in the Ing lobby, this would have been over hours ago. "Oh, we're getting a continue," the hand dude exclaimed in amusement. What is it with him and his video game references? I've been waiting, hero. You trash of society. Whoop, there it is. Can't say I don't agree with him. All Might, before anyone could see what he was doing, bolted in the scene, punched the villain to the ground and grabbed Aizawa and handed him to Sue and Mineta, who had come closer to the plaza, after Izuku jumped in. "He's fast, as expected, I couldn't even follow him with my eyes," the villain mumbled, more to himself than the heroes and students there. "But not as fast as I thought he'd be. So the rumors are true, then. He's getting weaker." A maniacal grin could barely be seen behind the embalmed hand on his face. "He hit me to save others," he continued. "The violence of a government puppet, violence for the sake of others makes it admirable. Isn't that right, hero?" He snickered as he opened his arms in a wide gesture. "You know what, All Might? I'm angry. I'm angry at this world that categorizes the same violent acts as heroic or villainous, depending on who makes them. Symbol of peace. Ha, you're just a device to repress violence. Violence only brings violence. The world will know this once we kill you." Damn, Izuku actually agreed. He couldn't say that out loud, of course, but those words somewhat resonated with him. Meanwhile, the clusters of villains that had come to the plaza by that point, started getting attacked by some of the students who had just arrived there to help, namely Kirishima and Katsuki. Maybe the first actually heroic thing the blonde had ever done. Todoroki also rushed to the scene, and encased the right side of the Nomu, who had started charging towards All Might, in ice. In its attempt to break free, it tore apart its arm and leg, but even self-mutilation didn't get a reaction out of the monster. Instead, to everyone's horror, its limbs started regenerating. Isn't its quirk shock absorption? Izuku wondered. The villain laughed. It is, but that's not its only one. This is its super regeneration. The Nomu's arm and leg had fully healed, and it was ready to attack once more. The Nomu has been modified to take down All Might at 100%. Bio-engineered weapons with multiple quirks, made to kill a specific hero. Who are these guys? These guys are crazy, but if we back up All Might, Kirishima's suggestion was cut off by the #1 hero himself. No, absolutely not. You're going to run away now. You would have been in trouble if I hadn't done anything earlier, though, right? Todoroki pointed out. Izuku hummed in agreement, not expecting to get praised for his own efforts, and he wouldn't bother bringing it up, either. It was more like silently trying to communicate with the half-and-half boy that they shared the same thought. That they were the ones who actually did some damage, while the teachers, Sans Aizawa and 13, slacked off, and now they were being dismissed because it's not their job, or whatever. That's different, Todoroki shonen. Thank you, but it's fine. Just watch a pro give everything he's got. Well, it won't be everything you got, you arrogant asshole. Izuku was getting angrier with his mentor every time he saw him, but sometimes the man was beyond stupid. You literally didn't come today because you wasted your 3 hours this morning. You're barely keeping your buff form as it is. Fighting that thing will surely reveal your secret, if not kill you because of it. The creature charged at the hero, but Izuku had already started running towards it, ignoring, once again, the protests of his teacher and classmates. What the hell are you doing, Deku? Todoroki, ice, he shouted, hoping his classmate would understand what he was asking, and by the time he used full cowl to jump into the air, Todoroki had thankfully understood and trapped the Nomu once again in ice. This time its whole body, apart from its head. Izuku had figured that since brute attacks, quirked or not, weren't effective at all, perhaps he should find a weak spot, and the most promising thing he could see was the Nomu's exposed brain and eyes. It was worth a shot. Izuku, who had started falling from the air, towards his target, released a scream, as he concentrated the maximum amount of power to his fist, and punched the monster's head, and specifically its brain. Silence engulfed the whole establishment when the monster collapsed to the ground, its head smashed to pieces, brain matter scattered all over the floor and, unfortunately to its attacker, on Izuku's face. No, that can't be, he used a cheat code, the hand dude whispered, and started frantically scratching his neck with both arms. I can't believe he did that to my Nomu, it's game over. That's when gunshots reverberated in the building. Everyone's heads turned towards the source, and Izuku spotted the pro-hero snipe, gun in hand, with Present Mike, Smintos, and other UA faculty members standing beside him. Sorry we're late, everyone. Principal Nezu's distinctive cheerful voice came from behind them. So now the heroes decided to join the party. Izuku almost groaned. Finally. The heroes swiftly scattered to the different parts of the establishment, and started attacking the villains that were still standing, taking them out easily. Snipe started firing his gun again, effectively shooting the hand villain in the legs and arms, causing him to fall down, grunting in pain. Shigaraki Tamura, Kurogiri yelled, and engulfed the aforementioned villain in his mist. Right before disappearing, Shigaraki's hoarse voice sounded, barely audible as he got deeper and deeper into the mist. I may have failed today, but I will kill you next time, All Might. And with those words, the purple warp that had previously brought all the villains in the USJ, vanished into thin air, along with the 2 villains responsible for this whole mess. Not much happened after that. Most of the heroes arrested all the villains that had been brought along with the Nomu and the 2 men in charge, whereas the others were looking around for the students, ready to provide first aid if necessary. All Might, who hadn't sustained any injuries, literally fled the scene as soon as he thanked Izuku for saving him and made sure he wasn't hurt, so no one would see him turning into Small Might. Izuku, who was already exhausted from the lack of sleep this morning, and had used his quirk too much for his liking, was now laying on the ground, trying to catch his breath. If this many pro-heroes have gathered here, then they probably didn't attack the whole school, Todoroki remarked. Oh, Midoriya, are you okay? Izuku's eyes snapped open at the sound of his name. Todoroki was coming towards him, a hint of worry in his otherwise apathetic face. Oh, I'm all right, Todoroki-kun. I'm just exhausted. He gave him a tired smile to prove his point, and stood up. His vision went black for a few seconds, and he almost fell, but Todoroki was quick to catch him. He took Izuku's arm around his shoulders, supporting his weight, and helped him walk towards the exit. Thank you. He smiled genuinely at the boy, who only hummed instead of responding. When they got outside, a detective counted the students to ensure no one was left inside the USJ, and then everyone started recounting their experience during the attack. Thankfully, no student was injured, but they all had stories to tell with the villains they encountered and the fights they got into. Izuku only half listened to everyone close, and thankfully they could tell he was tired, because no one asked him any questions. There were others with him who could explain his own battles. What seemed somewhat odd to Izuku was Aoyama, who was going around to everyone, asking where they thought he was. Most didn't even seem to have heard him, but Sue was kind enough to listen. So, where do you think I was? Where? It's a secret. Sparkles started glimmering around his face. Was this a part of his quirk? And smiled to no one in particular, as Sue deadpanned at him, before turning away. At that point, the detective from earlier announced that everyone was going back to their classroom, since they won't be questioned right away. Where are Aizawa-sensei and 13-sensei? Sue asked. They are both in the hospital, being treated. Aizawa had a comminuted fracture in his left arm, and a concussion and subdural hematoma caused by head trauma. Fortunately, there doesn't seem to be any serious brain damage, so he's going to be just fine. He paused, giving some time to the students to take in what they just heard, and express their relief. As for 13, they had a bad laceration on their back, but they will be fine, too. Even All Might is in good shape. Recovery Girl's quirk is enough to treat him, so he's in the nurse's office. Izuku suppressed a snort. He was only with her so no one would see his skinny form. Thanks to Izuku, he had no injuries to treat in the first place. He thought of the irony in this situation. Izuku didn't want to be a hero, but ended up doing their job in their place. And it's only the first week of school. The attack on USJ by the League of Villains seemed only the beginning. Izuku sensed it was the first step for something bigger. Izuku made a visit to Recovery Girl, to his classmates' requests, who saw him exhausted. At first, he declined, since he wasn't injured, but they insisted he at least gets a look. As he reached the nurse's office, he hesitantly knocked on the door. Hello, is it all right if I come in? He slightly opened the door, and peeked inside. Midoriya Shonen, come in. All Might sounded, but he was greeted by Recovery Girl, who was holding a handful of energy gummies for him to take. She gave him a quick kiss, to see if there was anything she needed to heal. There wasn't, so she handed him the gummies and shooed him towards the number 1 hero. All Might was sitting on a bed, chatting with the detective from earlier. Wait, he was Small Might right now. Did the detective know about his secret? All Might, is it all right to show that form? The hero laughed. Yeah, it's fine. This is my best friend in the force, Tsukauchi Naomasa. What's with that introduction? The detective laughed nervously. Anyway, I was saying about Eraserheads and 13's conditions, which you already know, he told Izuku, who nodded, and then turned to the hero, and only a few students had light injuries. Thank goodness, All Might sighed in relief. If you 3 heroes had not risked your lives, then the students would not have survived, Tsukauchi exclaimed. What? Izuku suppressed a frown. What the? Seriously? Yes, Aizawa and 13 did risk their lives, but All Might barely did anything, other than risking his secret getting exposed, not only to the students, but to the villains that literally wanted to kill him. It was Izuku and Todoroki who did the most damage and even killed the Nomu. And, most of the other villains were already defeated by his other classmates, by the time the heroes arrived. You're wrong about one thing, Tsukauchi-kun. The students also fought and risked their lives. Someone is acknowledging it. There have never been any first years who experienced a real fight so soon, survived, and learned the world of adults and fear. Yes, Izuku thought, because you, heroes, failed to protect us. Such a thing shouldn't have happened in the first place. It was your incompetence that let the villains break into the supposedly impenetrable school, and traumatizing literal children. This class is strong. They will become strong heroes. I am certain of that. All Might then turned to Izuku, stood up, and bowed. Thank you, Midoriya Shonen. You may have saved my life today, and for that I don't know how to repay you. Oh, no please, All Might, Izuku forced himself to shed tears, to seem relieved that his teacher was fine. I'm just glad you're okay. Midoriya-kun, Recovery Girl lightly tapped his head with her syringe cane. Go home and rest. Oh okay, then, thank you very much. Izuku waved the heroes and detective goodbye, and wiped away the tears off his face. You're welcome, Recovery Girl said, be careful on your way home. Yes ma'am. He let his cheerful attitude drop the moment he closed the door, and made his way to the exit. He was surprised to see Todoroki waiting for him at the gate. He jogged towards him and gave him a polite smile as they left the school. How are you feeling? Todoroki asked after a couple minutes. I'm good, just tired. Nothing sleep can't fix. He gave the boy a small smile, and looked him over. How about you? Were you injured? I'm fine. Nothing I haven't gotten in training before. He stiffened at those last words, as if he hadn't meant to say them out loud. What kind of training did? Oh, of course. He was Endeavor's son. Of course the flaming trash bag would train his kid ruthlessly. He couldn't have a weak hero of a child now, could he? Izuku already disliked the number 2 hero, but now his feelings about him were getting closer to hatred. He shook his head, dispersing those thoughts, and focused on the boy walking beside him. Thank you, Todoroki-kun. The taller boy frowned. What for? For helping me. With the Nomu, I mean. I'm glad you understood what I meant. Oh, yes, of course. It's not like any of the heroes were there or could do anything. His face was neutral, as always, but there was a tension that Izuku could faintly understand. We kinda did their job, didn't we? Izuku muttered, before he could think about it. Now Todoroki would think he disliked the heroes or something and maybe tell someone and. Yes, I suppose we did. Oh, well, he agreed. Izuku wondered about the boy's thoughts on heroes in general, but he didn't know him that well, and that seemed like a question he would ask after they felt somewhat comfortable with each other. I also wanted to thank you for checking up on me later, and helping me stand on my feet. Izuku added, no one has ever done that for me before. He glanced at the boy next to him. He wore a perplexed expression on his face. After a few seconds of silence, Todoroki turned his head to look at him. No one has ever asked me if I was okay, either. His face may seem indifferent, but Izuku could tell he was being sympathetic. His mismatched eyes were kind, and he could tell the boy was trying to be comforting. Izuku gave him a thankful smile, and they walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence. Chapter text. By the time Izuku got home, he was utterly exhausted. The whole USJ incident was pretty draining, even more so for a certain sleep-deprived green-haired boy. Izuku wearily took off his shoes, tossed his bag in his room, and made his way to the bathroom. He had a long shower, cleaning up all the debris and dust and brain matter that had littered Izuku during the whole thing. He promptly ignored his rumbling tummy. He was way too tired to make something to eat, put on some PJs and went straight to bed. He fell asleep seconds after his head hit the pillow. He got woken up, hours later, when his mom barged in, frantically asking if he was okay. She was at work when the incident was announced in the news, and she didn't get off until now, so she hadn't had a chance to see him. After he reassured her that everything was fine, he wasn't hurt, just exhausted, and had only been sleeping, she finally calmed down, and went to prepare dinner. She made katsudon, his favorite, in an attempt to make him feel better, after everything he experienced. And it worked. As he relished his mom's cooking, he thought about what awaited him tonight. He had almost forgotten about it, but a lengthy text from Himiko, who was also concerned and wanted to make sure he was okay. He reassured her he was fine, reminded him of the meetup he had arranged for tonight at midnight. He would have to sneak out, but that wouldn't be a problem. His mom was a fairly heavy sleeper. After they ate dinner, he kissed his mom goodnight, and prepared for his meeting with the most renowned broker in the underground. Izuku was fairly nervous, not because of the meeting itself, but because of what it signified. It was his first concrete step towards his goal, and he really didn't want to it up. He arrived at the meeting spot at exactly 23:57. The person on the phone, the one Himiko had gotten info of and was sure would get him an appointment, had given him instructions on the time and place, as well as how to get there, without risking being followed. It had taken quite some time for Izuku to persuade them he wanted to meet the broker for a legitimate reason, but it would totally be worth it. If anyone could help Izuku with his plan, and make his life 100 times easier, it was Jiren. The instructions led him to a pretty secluded part of Himiko's neighborhood, right outside an antique furniture store. He double-checked the address to make sure he wasn't in the wrong place. He supposed it was a font, a meeting point for the rare occasions the broker didn't scout and approach the other person first. At 12 o'clock sharp, the door to the seemingly closed store opened, and a tall, compared to Izuku, figure entered his field of vision. The green-haired boy was leaning against the wall, right beside the entrance. Izuku had worn a formal attire, hoping that he would be taken seriously despite his young age, that was unfortunately showing on his face. He was wearing a three-piece dress suit, consisting of black pants, a white shirt underneath his black vest, and a red tie to complete the look, as well as a pair of black faux leather derby shoes. He had purchased the outfit a few days ago, thinking it would come in handy for exactly that kind of situation, and Himiko wouldn't stop bombarding him with compliments when he showed her. The middle-aged man took a look at him through his glasses, for a second, before sporting a grin. One of his front teeth was missing, leaving a gap right in the middle. "Ah, right on time. Come on in," is all the man said, before going back inside. Izuku was a little bit surprised they didn't check for credentials or something, but since this was Jiren, he probably always had measures against setups. Izuku took a deep breath and stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The man led him to the back of the store, up a staircase and to an office on the first floor. The man sat on his chair behind the desk, and gestured to Izuku to take a seat as well. The boy complied, and placed his heavy green backpack on the empty chair next to him. Jiren introduced himself formally, and leaned onto his desk. Under the better lighting, Izuku could make out his facial features, and the pink pair of eyes that were watching him with curiosity. "So, in what way does a UA heroics student need my assistance?" Izuku stiffened. How did he know he went to UA? Does this mean he had already ed up and didn't even have a chance to speak? The man's laughter interrupted his thoughts. "Don't worry, kid, I was just surprised a hero student of all people wanted to meet me." He took out a cigarette packet from his blazer's front pocket. "I always do background checks on my clients. It's good for business, ya know." Jiren placed a cigarette between his lips. He silently urged Izuku to explain his reasons for contacting him. Izuku cleared his throat, hoping his voice wouldn't sound too childish in the man's ears. "I need connections. I have a goal, and I need help, from people I wouldn't be able to find on my own." Jiren chuckled as he lit his cigarette, and took a long drag. "And what goal would a kid like you have in mind? It must be important if you contacted the underground for it." "It is." Izuku's face turned completely serious, completely opposite from his previously nervous but trying to seem calm demeanor. He wasn't sure if the man was mocking him before, but he saw his smug attitude disappear the moment Izuku spoke. Jiren was now sitting up straight, smirk gone, his hand brought up to scratch the goatee on his chin. "I want information," Izuku continued. "I need a competent hacker, someone with enough knowledge and skills to break into a very secure, impenetrable almost, database and retrieve me data without being found out, or being traced back to me." The broker listened intently, nodding along as Izuku spoke. After a few seconds of silence, he took another drag and exhaled slowly. And what impenetrable database would that be? He perked up his lips into a small grin, albeit more subtle than before. Izuku gave him a grin of his own. The Hero Public Safety Commission. Jiren choked on the smoke he had just inhaled, and Izuku watched in amusement as he coughed and reached for a bottle of water to clear his throat. After the man composed himself, he looked at Izuku in utter disbelief. The commission? Are you serious? When he only got a smirk, instead of an answer, he paled considerably and started muttering to himself. He's serious, what the? He pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. You know what, I'm not even going to ask. Jiren cleared his throat and resumed to his professional demeanor. You just want me to introduce you to a hacker, right? Izuku nodded. And are you able to pay for that? Izuku shifted in his seat. He had to play his cards right, or this was for nothing. I can't pay you with money, he started. The man raised an eyebrow, but didn't interrupt him. Izuku opened his backpack and took out 12 notebooks. Specifically, his hero analysis for the future ones. I have information. I have been analyzing heroes since I was a toddler. Strengths, weaknesses, fighting styles, patrol routes, personal information, you name it. These are the ones I wrote up to my last year of middle school. He handed them to the broker, who started skimming through them. The more he read, the more surprised and amazed his expression turned, his eyes wide and brows raised. As you can see, the first ones were written when I was still in elementary school. He gestured to the notebooks that were mostly written in crayons, and had more childish drawings than actual analysis, but the notes inside were still impressive for a 6-year-old to take. However, Izuku smirked, I have rewritten all my analysis in new notebooks, with a lot more details than the latest ones. He gestured at the double-digit ones, and locked his eyes to the brokers. I can give you copies of all my analysis. You can sell them, trade them in the black market, I don't really care. Jiren took one last drag and discarded his cigarette in a glass ashtray. You do realize that if people get their hands on these, many heroes will most likely end up dead. Yes, Izuku said, indifference obvious in his tone. I lost my faith in heroes a long time ago. I don't really care what happens to them. Jiren didn't speak for a while. Izuku figured he was probably trying to process everything the hero student saying, and why he was a hero student in the first place, if he was willing to sell his information on the heroes in order to literally break into the commission's database. So Izuku sat in silence, letting the man gather his thoughts. He didn't provide any further explanation, either. He didn't own him any, and he had already provided everything he needed to persuade him, or so he hoped. Eventually, the broken took a deep breath, adjusted his glasses on his nose, and stared intently into Izuku's eyes, as a grin formed on his lips, the gap in his teeth fairly visible. You've got yourself a deal. Izuku gave him a grin of his own. Did you see how everyone in class was on screen last night? Man, all the channels made such a big deal out of it. Izuku idly listened as his classmates conversed about the USJ incident making the news. The school was temporarily closed the day after the incident, so today was the last day of his first week of high school. Izuku couldn't wait for it to be over. And it was a Saturday. Izuku really didn't understand why they had to go to school on Saturdays. Sure, most of Japan's schools did, but that didn't mean that it was efficient. Izuku had read a study once, comparing the average grade point of schools in the same district, some that used the usual weekly program, while the others had the whole weekend free. Unsurprisingly, in the first case, the average grades were much lower, and their students felt much more pressured for their academic performance than the kids that had 2 days off. It was as if working kids to the ground wasn't the best way to ensure their academic success. Shocker. Still, he was glad he had a free day yesterday, and called Himiko to hang out. Izuku insisted they didn't train, he was still tired from the USJ attack, and he updated her on his meeting with Jiren. He also told her about his encounter with Stain the day before, to which she responded overly excitedly, having mad respect for the man and his ideals. Of course they did. It was the hero course that was attacked, after all, Juro reasoned. Who knows what would have happened if the teachers hadn't come when they did, Shiro chimed in. Izuku suppressed a snort. Nothing is what would have happened. Eraserhead, Izuku and some of his classmates were handling the villains just fine when All Might blessed them with his presence. The number one hero didn't even do anything, and he still got most of the praise for saving the class. Well, it wasn't like the school could let the media know that the students were the ones that defeated most of the villains and even killed the monster they brought to kill All Might. Its existence wasn't even made public. Instead, they told them that the pro-heroes defeated and arrested 72 villains, with the help of the students of 1A. They also failed to mention how the ringleaders got away. Stop that, Shiro. Just thinking about it makes me wanna wet myself, Mineta cried, but Katsuki was quick to yell at his to shut him up, before Izuku had the chance to. But man, Midoriya was awesome. He crushed that crazy strong villain. Sato exclaimed, and everyone's attention turned to their green-haired classmate, who was trying, and failing, to conceal himself. Yes, his strength is worth admiring, Tokiyami agreed, the others providing their own opinion on Izuku's heroic actions. Izuku muttered a few humble thank yous, and resumed scrolling through social media on his new phone. After they sealed the deal, Jiren gifted him a virtually untraceable smartphone, that he put his personal phone number and information in, so he could keep him updated about the meeting with his contact. The teenager refused at first, but the broker insisted, claiming that it was his policy to ensure an unassailable means of communication with his clients, especially with prestigious ones like the hero student. Izuku was glad he wouldn't have to borrow Himiko's phone again, and even gave her his old one. Izuku gave the broker a copy of his first 2 updated hero notebooks, that he had also brought with him, as an upfront payment, and when the broker introduced him to the most competent hacker he knew, he would give him the rest. Of course, Izuku wouldn't give him all of his rewritten notes. He wanted to keep some, in case he wanted to make another deal with the broker. And he had a feeling he would be seeing him again. Izuku vaguely registered Iida declaring the beginning of homeroom, and instructing everyone to take their seats. Hey, Sue, do you know who will be teaching homeroom today? Ashido asked. Well, the frog girl brought her index finger to her chin. Aizawa-sensei is supposed to be in the hospital recovering from his injuries, Hiro. Izuku grimaced at the memory of his teacher's head getting crushed on the ground by the Nomu. The crunching sound that reached his ears right before Izuku attacked the monster would never leave his mind. He couldn't even imagine how much worse Aizawa would be right now, assuming he got out alive, if Izuku hadn't stepped in. Morning, the familiar gruffy voice sounded as the huge door of the classroom opened. And there stood Aizawa, in all his glory, his face wrapped in bandages, and his right hand in a cast. Everyone started shouting their concerns over the teacher being there, asking if he was all right. My well-being doesn't matter, the teacher declared as he made his way to the podium. Izuku rolled his eyes. So dramatic. More importantly, the fight isn't over yet. Aizawa squinted through his bandages, eyes barely visible. The UA Sports Festival is drawing near. Izuku chuckled at his teacher's antics, while everyone was getting hyped up. That's a super normal school event, Hiroshima declared enthusiastically. Wait a minute, Kaminari butted in. Is it a good idea to have a festival so soon after villains snuck into the school? Yeah, what if they take advantage of it and attack again? Ojiro questioned. Izuku thought it was somewhat sad, and also infuriating, how the students were already relieved that they were having a normal high school experience, instead of a villain attack, or something equally dangerous. They weren't supposed to be afraid about their school activities in the first place. Apparently, Aizawa answered, they think that, if UA holds the event, it will be showing that our crisis management system is solid as a rock. Izuku barely managed to stop himself from laughing. Security will also be strengthened to 5 times that of previous years, the teacher continued. More importantly, our sports festival is a huge chance for you hero students. He proceeded to explain the importance and significance of the event, that would be held 2 weeks from now on the first day of May, that Izuku already knew about and tuned out. Of course, all the top heroes in Japan will be watching for scouting purposes. Yaomomo noted. Others started talking about how the heroes would look for potential sidekicks once the students graduate. Well, some of them lose their chance to become independent, and become internal sidekicks, Jiro emphasized. Kaminari, I feel like you'd be one of them. 'Cause you're dumb. Well, that wasn't very nice. Kaminari wasn't the smartest in their class, but he wasn't dumb either. He did seem like one when he overused his quirk, though. Izuku had already analyzed the boy's powers, as he had all his classmates, and had so many ideas for improvement. He had briefly wondered if he should approach him and give him advice, but Katsuki's yells over how creepy his notes are would echo in his ears, and he thought better of it. Aizawa carried on with his speech, and he highlighted the importance of the festival for the students who wanted to become pros. No aspiring heroes can afford to miss this event. So don't slack off. Go beyond, plus ultra or whatever. Yes, sir. During lunch, Izuku left the classroom quietly, bento box in hand, while his classmates expressed their thoughts on the upcoming festival, with various levels of excitement. As he sat down on a secluded spot and ate his meal, he started thinking about his own aspirations for the event. On one hand, if he tried his best to win, he would attract a lot of attention to himself. He wouldn't be able to stay low after that, while he would be actively trying to bring down the commission, and he would be risking getting found out. On the other hand, he really wanted to prove himself. No to the heroes, or his classmates, well, maybe except Katsuki, but he would never admit that. He wanted to prove to himself that he was better than all of them. That even a weak, useless Deku could rise high enough to get a spot in the biggest event in all of Japan, even if almost no one knew he used to be quirkless. He wanted to feel powerful, and beating all those hero students in their own game, never mind his friend-turned-bully, would be beyond satisfying. It's not like he hadn't already showed that he was better. The entrance exam and the quirk apprehension test were enough proof of that. But winning a national event, where millions of people would be watching, albeit terrifying, felt exhilarating. So, yeah, Izuku would do his best. He would show those heroes what he was really made of. The risks would be worth it, even for a selfish reason like that. Uraraka-kun. Ida's booming voice interrupted his thoughts, as he and their classmate passed by him, thankfully without noticing him. If you don't mind me asking, what were your reasons for applying for UA, and wanting to become a hero? Oh, actually, Izuku could tell this wasn't something she really wanted to discuss, but he would also admit he was curious. He really hoped it wasn't a selfish reason. Heroes were already corrupt and choosing the job for literally any reason other than being selfless and heroic, but a small part of him wanted to believe the new generation would actually have righteous motives. For money, Iida exclaimed. You want to be hero for money? To boil it down simply, yes, Uraraka was rubbing the back of her head, eyes glued to the floor. Oh well, that threw a noble reason out the window. Not that Izuku was disappointed. No, he had already lost any expectations for everyone in heroics. He wished it was different. That his generation would be different. No matter, even if his peers were the same as the older ones, Izuku would just have to be the one to change things. He ate the last of his bento, got up and left the cafeteria, before he could hear any excuses the girl would spew out. As he turned at the corner, a very familiar and very annoying laugh sounded from behind him. Midoriya Shonen is here. All Might was pointing at him, making everyone in the hallway, including the two classmates he wanted to avoid, turn to look at him. All Might, what are you doing here? Seriously, what was he doing? If he wanted to speak to him, the worst possible way to do so was to announce it to everyone around. Lunch. He took out a bento box, that he was hiding behind him, and pointed at it, looking rather sheepish. Wanna eat together? Izuku wanted to facepalm so hard. He might as well announce to the whole school that he had a special student he wants to hang out with and eat lunch together. How does this man expect to keep his secret, seriously? Of course, Izuku said none of that. Instead, he made his face light up, and rushed towards him. I'd love to. He ignored the whispers of his classmates, who were wondering about his relationship with the hero, as well as where he was the whole break. Only 1 hour. Yeah, Small Might sighed, as he poured Izuku and himself a cup of tea. That's the limit to how long I can use my powers now. They were sitting in the teacher's lounge, at the hero's request, to talk privately. Izuku wasn't expecting that to be the topic of discussion, though. I overdid it many times, All Might continued. I can barely maintain my muscle form for 2 hours now. He sipped some of his tea, before turning to Izuku with a solemn expression. I think it would be a lot worse, if it was me who fought the Nomu, Midoriya Shonen, that day. You may have saved my life. I'm not sure if I would have enough strength to fight the monster, until the other heroes arrived, never mind kill it. He paused, letting Izuku process what he was saying. The student himself had already thought of this, of course. All Might appearing when he didn't contribute to anything, other than removing Eraserhead from the scene, but that could have been done by literally any student there. The man had not only risked his life when he knew he wouldn't be able to fight, but he also jeopardized his secret, and that would bring a whole lot of other problems. When he realized Izuku would not say anything yet, the teacher cleared his throat, and stood up. What I want to say, Midoriya Shonen, is that, on that day, your heroic actions, Izuku held back a grimace, and smiled with fake pride instead, saved not only your classmates, and Aizawa-kun's life, but also mine. And for that, I will always be grateful for. He proceeded to bow 90 degrees, and spoke again. Thank you, Midoriya Shonen. I own you my life, and I will forever be in your debt. Well, Izuku was not expecting that. Although, a hero being in his debt, never mind the number 1, was an asset he could definitely take advantage of later. He filed that information in the back of his mind, and took a deep breath. Please, there's no need to thank me. He also stood up, as the hero looked up. I was only doing what was right, and I knew you had already spent your 3 hours that day, so I did everything in my power to help you. The hero smiled proudly, and took his seat, Izuku copying him. I didn't expect to kill that Nomu though. I'm glad I saved everyone, but killing, he played with his fingers as he expressed the troubles of a hero student causing their first death. If he was being honest, Izuku didn't really think much of it, when he smashed the Nomu's brain. He was more upset about getting brain matter on his face, rather than actually having killed someone. Sure, it wasn't an actual person, from what the villains had said. It was a bioengineered weapon, hopefully not a human that was experimented on, but that was an entirely different conversation, but still a living being. And yet, Izuku didn't feel any remorse, or guilt, or anything an innocent child would, after their first kill. On the contrary, he felt somewhat proud. He saw it more like an achievement, a victory. Even though it might seem ironic, it was revitalizing. Thrilling, even. He felt powerful, being in control, in a seemingly uncontrollable situation. If he wanted to, he could have turned the tables so easily. And that thought exhilarated him. But he obviously couldn't admit that. The heroes might think he was crazy, and maybe traumatized to the point he was having villainous thoughts, or whatever. So, he pretended the whole incident troubled him, and let All Might talk about how it was an important feat to his journey of becoming a hero. A necessary action for the greater good, and all that stuff. Not surprisingly, the hero didn't even mention the possibility of Izuku attending therapy, or even just speaking with Hound Dog, who, apart from a pro-hero, was also the school counselor. Speaking of, why didn't the school immediately order mandatory therapy sessions for everyone in his class? It was literally a traumatic event. Did they seriously think, well, they are hero students, so they'll get over it, or, it's part of the job, or, they're strong, as All Might put it. The number 1 hero had also said they, too, fought and risked their lives, which proves the point. What if they had died, or been seriously maimed? What would the school do then? It was infuriating. They didn't even consider the effects of the incident on the kids' mental health. And the heroes deal with that kind of stuff every day. They should know better than to assume they're strong, and leave them be. Maybe that's one of the reasons pro-heroes ended up the way they are. Anyway, All Might change the subject, completely oblivious of Izuku's internal turmoil. I also wanted to talk to you about the sports festival. Izuku frowned, as he raised his cup of tea to his mouth. What did he want, now? The hero stood up again, and walked towards the window, looking outside instead of his student. Frankly, I don't have much time left as the symbol of peace. Yeah, no shit, and some of those villains are starting to realize it. Izuku recalled the hand villain, Shigaraki Tamura, as the mist person called him, realizing All Might's speed was getting slower. I granted you my power because I want you to succeed me. Oh, no, Izuku didn't like where this was going. He stood up when the hero turned and faced him with a serious expression. It's time to show the world the kind of hero you want to become. The UA Sports Festival is an event that pro heroes, the whole country, even, will be watching closely. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. Oh, crap, Izuku really didn't like where this was going. The next All Might, the fledgling symbol of peace, Midoriya Izuku. I want you to tell the world, I am here. Oh, me, chapter text, no. No 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 no. This was just the worst. Izuku was internally fuming. All Might literally just assigned him the role of the symbol of peace, without giving him a choice. The Zygote had obviously made an entire plan for his successor, gave him his quirk, and just assumed the student would want to follow his footsteps. He didn't even ask him what he wanted. He may have wanted to be a rescue hero, or go underground, like Eraserhead. He may not want the publicity of a limelight hero, never mind being the successor of the #1 hero, the next symbol of peace. Sure, Izuku wanted in no way to become a hero, but that was not the point. It was blatantly obvious the buffoon was sure that Izuku would want to become a newer version of himself. Because gods forbid he wanted to become his own person, a totally different hero with his own personality. To have a purpose in life, other than to fulfill All Might's dreams and aspirations, that he failed to complete. Besides, objectively speaking, it would be a terrible idea to announce an upcoming replacement for the #1 hero. Not only would he have to live up to the almost impossible standards that people would have of him, Izuku would also only be just that. A replacement. He would never be his own person, just a cheap copy of the symbol of peace with a similar quirk and a weak attempt to compensate for the retirement of Japan's favorite hero. Izuku couldn't begin to express how furious and exasperated he was with the man's blatant stupidity. But, as it was, he was now standing right in front of him, and he had to provide an answer to the idiot's wish. He suppressed all of his anger and forced his face, which took quite the effort, to morph into something he hoped to appear as a mix of modesty, nervousness, and a tad of fear. All Might, I don't know if I'm up to this. Izuku could feel his face burning with fury, but he glued his eyes to the floor, and shifted his weight, hoping it could pass as embarrassment and self-consciousness. I don't think I can stand out that much. An impressive amount of blood spewed out from All Might's nose and mouth. No one's better at spouting nonsense than you. Dude, that was so mean and uncalled for. Nonsense, Izuku made himself say, instead. The hero then started spouting actual nonsense that Izuku didn't bother actually listen to, but he did register an, I won't force you, as if that would make him feel better if he was actually interested in becoming a great hero. When the man finally stopped talking, Izuku wished him a good day, actually hoping he stubbed his pinky toe on a table, and left the teacher's lounge in a hurry. He could finally let his mask drop, and he could feel his face forming into a scowl that would put Katsuki's to shame. He took deep breaths through his nose, as he walked towards his classroom, hoping that by the time he made it there, he would be calm enough to play his usual part of a shy, anxious little kid. Before he reached the classroom, however, he felt a pair of eyes following him. He looked around and spotted a boy his age, sitting on the stairs alone, eating his food. It looked like he was having a meal from the school's cafeteria, but why was he alone? As they made eye contact, Izuku noticed the boy's eyes were deep purple, almost the same shade as his gravity-defying hair, with dark circles underneath. The teen raised an eyebrow, and Izuku, who realized he was still frowning from his previous conversation with All Might, put on his polite hero student mask, and gave him a small smile before walking away. When the school day finally ended, Izuku gathered his stuff and quietly walked towards the classroom's door, before noticing a crowd that was blocking the exit. What business do you have with Class A? Iida asked the students that had gathered in the hallway, stiff and serious as always. Scouting competition, obviously, Katsuki replied instead, unusually calm, but with his signature scowl still in place. We're the ones that made it out of a villain attack, in the USJ. They probably wanna check us out before the sports festival. There's no point in that, really. Despite the protests of his classmates, Katsuki walked towards the other students. Out of my way, extras. Don't call people extras, just because you don't know them. Iida scolded him. Izuku chuckled lightly. Katsuki has been calling everyone extras since he was 4, he's definitely not stopping now. Are all the hero students like that? One of them questioned. Seeing you like this makes me disillusioned. The person who spoke made their way to the front of the crowd, the other students making way for them to pass, almost afraid of them. Izuku was surprised to recognize the purple-haired boy that he saw in the hallway just a few hours ago. He was really tall, Izuku thought, but then again, everyone was tall compared to him. There are quite a few people who enrolled in the general studies or other courses, because they didn't make it to the hero course. Did you know that? The boy was looking right into Katsuki's eyes, unbothered by the blonde snarls. The other kids around him, that were visibly trying to get as far away from him as possible, while still blocking the classroom's door, were also watching him with expressions that ranged from annoyance to disgust and dismay. It really rubbed Izuku the wrong way. Depending on the results of the sports festival, the tired-looking team continued, they can be transferred into the hero course. And it seems that hero students can also be transferred out. That got quite a reaction from Izuku's classmates. Even if you're in the hero course, if you get carried away, someone may sweep you off your feet. His purple eyes met Izuku's, amethyst meeting Viridian. They lingered for a few seconds, before the boy turned and walked away. That was so simple and manly, Hiroshima exclaimed, as students from the other courses started gathering and commenting on their class. Izuku himself was inclined to agree. Izuku was laying in his bed with his laptop, watching the newest Gentle Criminal video. This time he had broken into a big brand clothing store that was recently exposed for child labor, and was shaming the heroes that had agreed to collaborations and sponsorships with them, when he heard his phone ding. He stopped the video and placed his laptop on the nightstand. A surge of excitement and nervousness ran through his veins, when he saw the broker's name on the screen. It had only been a few days since his meeting with Jiren, but Izuku guessed he was the most popular broker of the underground for a reason. With slightly trembling hands, he opened his phone and read the laconic message the man had sent him. Tomorrow, 9 p.m., Musutafushi the 7th of September 13. Bring your goodies smiley face. Izuku looked up the address, glad to see it wasn't too far from his house, albeit on the outskirts of the city. He almost couldn't wait, he would be meeting the person to guide him towards the destruction of this stupid hero society, after all. He quickly sent a text to Himiko, letting her know of the development, and fell back on his cushions. Letting out a deep sigh, he closed his eyes and let his mind wander. Bye mom, see you later. Okay, sweetie, have fun. Say hi to Himiko-chan for me. I will. Izuku all but slammed the door shut as he ran out of the apartment, barely having put his shoes on. It was Sunday, so he didn't have school today, and he totally took advantage of the free day to relax and do nothing. And by nothing, he meant no training, no homework. He had done everything yesterday, when he came home for school. No interactions with heroes or hero students, and most importantly, not having to keep a mask on, pretending to be someone he's not. He could finally be himself, even for a day. He woke up late, almost worrying his mom, but with everything that happened the past week, and it was just the first week of school. He really needed to rest and catch up with his sleep, or he would end up collapsing from exhaustion. He ordered takeout, as his mom was at work, and only came home late in the afternoon, and he really didn't feel like cooking. Even though he had a meal plan to be in his best shape, he wasn't as strict with following it to the letter, especially since he had bulked up significantly the past few months, and had already gotten All Might's quirk. At around 8 p.m., having been stuck on his laptop screen, browsing on YouTube and binging on Gentle Criminal videos and vigilante documentaries, his mom came into his room to ask about dinner, and he literally jumped from his bed realizing he had totally forgotten about the important meeting he had to attend. He spewed some excuse of having plans with Himiko as he hastily got dressed in a pair of jeans and a green hoodie that said, "Hoodie," on the front. He planned on wearing his formal attire again, since he was going for business, but his mom would think it was weird, so he took the clothes and shoes with him, and he would change in a public restroom or something. He also put his updated hero analysis copies in his backpack, and promised to be back before midnight. He rushed towards the address Jiren sent him the day before, making a quick stop to change, and fortunately arrived 10 minutes early. He took a moment to collect himself, and sat on the stairs just outside the apartment building that bore the number 13 above the entrance door. Izuku stared at his phone, waiting for the clock to turn 9, when he heard a familiar voice approaching him. "There he is," Jiren exclaimed, and leaned against the door as he took out his own phone. Izuku stood up and braced himself, as the broker made a quick phone call, presumably to the person they were meeting, and the entrance door opened. Jiren led him to the elevator and to the 7th floor, where they found an apartment door open. Jiren stepped inside without commenting the fact that no one had come to welcome them, and guided Izuku to a seating area. He sat on the couch, and ushered the teenager to do the same, when a really short woman stepped inside. She had her long dark pink hair in 2 high pigtails, the color matching her big eyes, dark circles around them. If she's the hacker Jiren was talking about, Izuku guessed being in front of a computer screen all of the time would really strain her eyes. She was wearing a cute, eccentric outfit, most notably a huge, white bow tie matching her gloves and puffy stripped pants, contrasting her violet buttoned-up shirt. "Kid," Jiren started. Izuku just realized the man hadn't asked for his name, even though he definitely knew it, considering he knew of his UA student identity. "Meet Labrava. She has the most impressive computer and hacking skills of anyone I know, and she was kind enough to accept a meeting with you." Labrava squinted her eyes at Izuku, and sat on a love chair. Literally, it was pink and the back of the chair was in the shape of a heart, before speaking. "I don't usually work for anyone except Gentle, but Jiren told me some interesting things." "Oh, so she was helping Gentle Criminal." He filed that for later, it could prove useful. Izuku didn't reply, so she continued. "He said you want to break into the Hero Commission's database." Izuku nodded. "Why should I help you? I'm screwed if the commission finds out, which they won't. I'm excellent at my job." "But what's in it for me?" Izuku was silent for a few moments, looking for the right words to convince her. "I'm familiar with Gentle Criminal's work." He gained a raised eyebrow from the woman. Girl. She didn't look much older than him, late teens, early 20s at most, and took it as a sign he had her attention. "I've seen most, if not all, of his videos, quite recently, too. I respect his work, and his motives. But he could use some help." Before Labrava could retort, he started explaining. "Some of his videos lack insight, or suitable reasoning. I've noticed that most of his low-viewed ones don't really get the message across. I can see that he's trying to show the truth of our corrupt society, but sometimes his criminal acts don't necessarily align with what he's trying to say, and I think he's struggling with expressing his arguments." Jiren was silent, a small smirk on his face, as he watched them in amusement. Labrava, on the other hand, was fuming, getting more upset with every negative comment. It seemed she was really close to the man. "I can help you with that," Izuku offered. "I can make plans for you, get you more views." Well, that seemed to work. She perked up, and looked at his with wide eyes. "We have the same goal. I want to show the world how wrong the system is, how corrupt the heroes and corporations are, just like him. That's why I need your help in the first place. I can help you make videos that will actually reach your audience, and make them see the truth. We can help each other." Izuku was getting nervous at her lack of response, but he tried his best to appear confident with his words. Besides, he was telling the truth. Gentle really couldn't articulate arguments for the life of him, and some of his crimes were completely theatrical and irrelevant to his goal. After a couple minutes of silence, Labrava sighed. "I really want to help him. He's not getting enough views, and he's really upset about it, even though he doesn't want me to worry and hides it. But lately it's been getting the better of him." She was fidgeting with her fingers, like Izuku used to do when he was nervous. She looked him in the eyes and clenched her hands into fists. Can you really help? Yes. Izuku's answer was immediate. She smiled, almost excitedly, and her tired-looking eyes lit up. Then I accept. She got up, walked towards him and extended her arm. Izuku smiled back, and shook her hand. After he paid Jiren for his services, meaning he gave him the copies of 4 hero analysis notebooks, Izuku received a high-tech laptop from the broker. The man said it was virtually untraceable, like the smartphone he had gifted him after their first meeting, and that it was an act of good faith in Izuku's capabilities and his own desire to see the teenager succeed in his goal. Izuku stayed a couple hours at the girl's apartment, that he learned was actually Gentle's. She had been living with him since last year, but they had been working together for almost 2 years now. Izuku kept his end of the bargain, brainstorming ideas for at least 5 videos for the villain duo, and even wrote 10 pages worth of speeches for him to give during them. He actually had fun with her, and even offered to keep in touch regularly, and provide them with more video ideas, plans and scripts. La Brava was overjoyed, and was sure to reciprocate with a quick display of her hacking skills, just a glimpse of her capabilities, that would allow her to come through with her part of the deal. Izuku watched in awe as she effortlessly got through the security in a random hero's, the closest in the area, personal computer, and checked their email history, in case they found anything suspicious. And, oh boy, they did. It was Pro-Hero Native's computer, and it was clear he was in cahoots with the commission. Some of the heavily encrypted, but easily decoded by Japan's fairest hacker, she blushed at Izuku's comment, emails, were exchanged between Native and the commission president, mostly her ordering him to do their dirty work, that consisted of silencing villains, and even corrupt heroes, to preserve the peace, as they claimed, and rewarding him for his services, of course. Izuku didn't hide his disgust and anger towards both the HPSC and the hero. He was almost afraid of what he would find in their database, what programs they have created, what heroes they have groomed, how many have died just to cover up their own mistakes and keep up their image. La Brava was not surprised by his reaction, he had come to her for a reason, after all. Izuku, on the other hand, didn't expect to see her usually bubbly and expressive personality to shift into a silent, calm rage. From what Izuku gathered during the hours he spent with her, as she talked about herself and Gentle, she wasn't as interested in the man's work itself, as much as helping him achieve his dream, to gain enough views while preaching about his ideals, and eventually become famous. Now that Izuku had shown her a glimpse of the reality of today's heroics, she could only imagine the scale on which this was happening. With a determined expression on her face, she looked him in the eye and swore she would help him bring it down. She would immediately get to work, both about the HPSC itself, and finding any hero's personal emails looking for similar findings, and update him every time she got more intel. She promised to find any dirt she could on the HPSC's database, and have a hard drive ready for him in less than 2 weeks. Izuku was impressed. If she actually managed that, he would be sorting everything out before the sports festival. Right before Izuku left, they exchanged phone numbers. As he saved her contact as La Brava, he realized he hadn't given her a name, apparently at the same time she did, because she was awkwardly standing in front of him. Her fingers were hovering above her contacts app, waiting for a name that should have been given in the beginning of their meeting, but none of them actually thought about it. Now, he could use his actual first name, but he was easily recognizable as the hero student Midoriya Izuku, green hair and eyes. If he didn't give her his true name, though, but a fake one, she was bound to recognize him from the sports festival in 2 weeks, and call him out for lying. Well, any name except his real one would prove him a liar, but a codename, like La Brava, who hadn't revealed her true identity either, but in the end, it didn't really matter in these situations, was secretive but also practical. He would be separating the persona he had interlaced with his name, Midoriya Izuku, the UA heroic student, and the real him, who was hanging out with villains, having deals with underground brokers, and assisting another villain for his work. All in the name of his true goal, to destroy the Hero Public Safety Commission, reveal to the world how corrupted the hero society has become and how much it needs to change. The goal to shed light to everything the Commission is hiding and doing under the shadows, and to the unfair discrimination that has resulted from that system. He will be the light, guiding them to the truth. Sue, Labrava asked sheepishly, what should I call you, then? Izuku grinned. He was now witnessing the birth of his alias, the person who would change everything. Call me, Izuku started, wide grin on his face, gleaming eyes looking directly in hers, light. Chapter text. And he had the audacity to call me creepy. Izuku grumbled as a response. Like he wasn't the one who followed that girl to her house before I caught up to him. Himiko whined. So, I took his blood and called it a night. Her eyes wandered dreamily as she pictured the dude's blood or something. You're definitely not creepy, Himiko-chan. Izuku closed his textbook, having just finished his homework for the day, and gathered his school supplies. I know, Izu-chan. She blushed, just like every time Izuku reminded her of how cute she was, and how wrong everyone else was when they talk bad about her. So, what about you? Any exciting news over the weekend? Not really, Izuku hummed in thought, as he put back everything in his backpack. I already told you everything about the meeting with Labrava, and that was the only notable thing yesterday. When he got home the night before, after making sure his mom was already asleep, he called his favorite vampire and told her all about his deal with the hacker, and his part of making her plans for Gentle's videos. Yeah, you did, she groaned with boredom. Nothing much happened during the day when she stayed in her hideout, so she was pun intended, for gossip. I loved your villain name, by the way. Light, it's so enlightening. She giggled, getting a few chuckles out of Izuku, too. Thank you, he smiled, before frowning. Is it a villain name, though? He didn't think he was a villain, or what the heroes considered as one, anyway. Was he? I mean, you hang out with villains, she gestured herself, making him roll his eyes, and helped Gentle Criminal with his videos, right? Well, yes, Gentle did upload a video a few hours ago based on one of Izuku's ideas, and even had preached one of his speeches. Izuku was impressed with how fast they made it, how he and Labrava managed to shoot, edit and post it, all before lunchtime. They were desperate for views, Izuku supposed. Still, he was happy for them, and kind of proud of himself, too. In just a couple hours, it had gotten over 5K views, which was almost as much as all their previous videos combined. Having written the script made Izuku an accomplice, even if he hadn't done anything outright illegal. Well, he did make a deal with an underground broker and a villain, both of which were illegal. And he was planning to continue doing so he might as well accept he had a villain alias, even if he hadn't done anything actually villainous. Not yet, at least. Anyway, I don't think I told you about school on Saturday. Izuku successfully changed the subject. Himiko shook her head frantically, and plopped in front of him on the ground, holding his hands in her own. Her other hand was busy holding a plastic cup that contained a smoothie of Izuku's blood and whatever else she decided to blend it with. Izuku explained everything he had heard about the school festival, and recounted his talk with All Might. Himiko made funny faces and provided hilarious commentary, and by the end they were making fun of all the pro heroes in the school, laughing so hard, they couldn't catch their breath. The smoothie Himiko had been slurping coming out of her nose as she laughed certainly didn't help. And at the end of the day, Izuku said after they somehow calmed themselves, a whole class worth of students came to our door and blocked the exit. Katsuki said they were scouting the competition. He shrugged, and played with Himiko's hair, who had by that point laid her head on his lap. The girl made a face at the mention of his childhood friend's name. Izuku had told her everything about Kachan, and she almost took it personally, how he had tormented Izuku all those years, having been through the same thing herself. At some point, a boy came to the front, Izuku continued. He was really tall, and purple. He blushed at Himiko's raised eyebrow. His eyes were purple, and so was his hair, and they were floating on his head, like a cloud. Maybe it has to do with his quirk. Does he some kind of anti-gravity quirk like Uraraka's, or is it? Whoa there, Izu-chan. She grinned maniacally, but looked less intimidating than usual, seeing her upside down with her head on his legs and her blonde locks between his fingers. Looks like someone has a crush. What? I do not, he stammered. It's just, he was in the front of the crowd and talking, and I couldn't help but look at him. He looked away from Himiko's piercing gaze, who was smiling like a predator, looking at their prey. Of course, Izuku would only suffer from too many kisses and cuddles from his best friend, but he still shivered when she looked at him like she could read his mind, especially when he couldn't even sort out his own thoughts. Izuku explained what the tall teen had said to his class, his frown deepening with every word. It was like he was about to declare war on the heroics class, but he didn't, and he almost seemed sad. I mean, he's probably one of the kids with no physical quirks that couldn't pass the entrance exam, but he didn't seem as committed anymore. Himiko only hummed in response, and closed her eyes briefly as Izuku brushed her hair with his fingers, and started separating them to make them into her signature buns. And the worst part was that, every kid around the door that came with him, looked like they were afraid and repulsed by him when he walked to the front. They even made way for him to pass, like they would get the plague if they touched him or something. Izuku had raised his voice, and he mumbled an apology when he realized it, seeing his friend flinching slightly. It reminded me of middle school, especially when everyone found out I was quirkless. Flashes of his early school days crossed his mind, the laughter, the nicknames, the explosions. Izuku shook his head. It wasn't like that anymore. He wasn't that kid anymore. I even saw him earlier that day, during lunch. He was eating alone on the stairs, and he had such a defeated look on his face, it made me, he sighed, when he couldn't find the right words. I don't know, but I saw myself in him. Himiko, whose buns were finished, sat on her butt and looked at Izuku with a shit-eating grin, snickering. It took Izuku a few moments to realize she had made a dirty joke out of what he had just said, without even speaking. Izuku groaned loudly. "Ah, it's not like that," he whined, and gave her a playful punch to the shoulder. "Sorry, Izu-chan." She gave him a smile that told him she was definitely not sorry, but then she took on a serious expression. "You should talk to him, though." Izuku looked up with a frown. "Why? He didn't even seem to like the heroic students. I don't think he would want to talk to me." She gave him a shrug and got up to polish her knives. "You're not like the other heroic students, though. And he's all alone at that school, isn't he?" The boy nodded. "It doesn't seem like people want to hang out with him, and I'm sure it's for a bullshit reason." He unclenched his fists. He hadn't realized he was doing that. "And we both know what it's like to be alone at school, especially because of a quirk. Besides," she wiggled her eyebrows in a way that made Izuku want to groan again, "he might actually come to like you, like a friend or more." She gave him her signature grin, ignoring his wails. For the entirety of the week, after their regular classes in the mornings, all 1A students were training for the sports festival, in groups, pairs, or individually, like Katsuki and Todoroki. Izuku caught the heterochromatic boy's eyes staring at him a couple times, especially when they had quirk training, but didn't think much of it. On Saturday, he even offered to train with him. Izuku couldn't tell exactly what made him approach the boy right before their foundational heroics class, where All Might unleashed them in training ground beta to do their own thing. How recreational, but he was glad the boy agreed to train together. Izuku was pleasantly surprised to find out the two could work together while exchanging little to no words. They did their warm-up exercises in comfortable silence, and then spar, with and without using their quirks. There was an unspoken level of understanding between them. Work hard and don't waste time, do your best and prove people wrong. Well, that last part was mostly about Izuku, but Todoroki had let out a few comments about getting back on his father, whatever that meant, so who was he to judge? Todoroki proved to be an excellent training buddy, if that meant Izuku would barely be able to walk for the next 5 business days. Damn, this boy was not holding back. When the school day ended, Izuku headed home, skipping his Aikido class, and wanting nothing more than to eat his dinner and take a 5-hour nap. Now that he thought about it, since school had started, and he would be training on a daily basis, his school schedule included both heroics training and gym classes every day, he could drop his martial arts classes. He had already mastered using the staff, and his sensei had praised him for his proficiency on his Aikido skills, especially considering the short amount of time he had been training there. Izuku was fairly sure that with those skills, Combined with his training with All Might after the entrance exam, and his heroics classes, he was competent enough to withdraw from his extracurriculars, now that he had a more important task to focus on, after school. La Brava hadn't contacted him yet, but Izuku had faith in her abilities and waited patiently. He did some research on his own, though, looking through old articles and reports over past incidents revolving around heroes, trying to find any dirt he could, both for himself and for video ideas to give Gentle Criminal. The villain duo would receive a huge thank you gift when La Brava gave him the promised hard drive. Izuku dropped by the Martial Arts Center on Monday afternoon, right after school, and took advantage of his newly acquired free time slot to take a stroll around the neighborhood. Himiko texted him earlier that she had a meeting to attend, whatever that was about, so he made use of the free time and walked home, instead of taking the train. His peaceful walk ended abruptly, however, when he was unexpectedly dragged to an alley. He hadn't even noticed the perpetrator walking up to him, never mind taking his arm and all but leading him to the alleyway, but when he recognized them, he wasn't all that surprised. Izuku regained his balance and looked at the hero killer with a bewildered expression. "What the do you want?" Bold choice of words, considering the man was capable of killing him on the spot, without giving Izuku a chance to react. But he was actually enjoying his walk, and got pissed that it was interrupted. Stain chuckled, and approached Izuku, playing with the knife in his hand. "I've been keeping an eye on you, Midoriya Izuku." Oh, shit, Stain had found out his identity. Wait, what? Why? Was the dude that interested in him to track him down? And he had gotten through the trouble of following him for gods know how long. Well, that's not creepy and disturbing at all. What for, though? Surely not to kill him. He was the hero killer. He was more than capable to end him without anyone ever knowing. He also wasn't radiating the murderous aura Izuku had felt the first time he met him. But if he knew his name, he also found out Izuku was a heroic student, and that was something probably not in his favor. "You're an interesting fellow, I'll give you that," the vigilante continued, unaware of Izuku's internal turmoil. "I was surprised to find out you're a hero student, after everything you said last time we met." He squinted his eyes at the teenager, like he was trying to see through him, figure out if everything he had said was true, and he wasn't bullshitting his way out of a potentially deadly situation. "I know you weren't lying," he said, as if reading his thoughts, "but I am curious, why would a kid with your experience and beliefs apply for the hero course?" Izuku glanced at Stain's hands, that were still toying with his knife playfully. He decided that the man did not, in fact, intend to hurt him. On the contrary, he seemed genuinely curious about him. Izuku sighed as took his bag off his shoulders, and sat on the ground. He got hit with a strong sense of déjà vu as he got himself comfortable, his forearms resting on his knees. "I didn't get into the hero course to be a hero," he started, gaining a raised eyebrow from the man. "I know it sounds weird, but," he took a deep breath, and looked the hero killer in the eye. "Remember how I told you All Might told me I couldn't be a hero and left me on a roof?" Stain nodded, giving him his undivided attention. "That was the day I decided I didn't want to be a hero anymore. And if society said I couldn't be a hero, if I couldn't become one of them, I would bring them down instead." Izuku's eyes focused on his hands, as he clenched them into fists. "You told me you wanted to cleanse society from all those fake heroes. My aspirations are similar, but bigger. I want to bring down the whole system. I want to destroy every inch of this inheroic society that raised me to believe a quirkless nobody, a useless Deku." Izuku all but spat the word, "like me could never achieve my childhood dream of becoming a hero, or any dream for that matter." His anger had become apparent in his voice, he was almost shouting, and he forced himself to take another deep breath. "I don't just want society to change. I don't want for the world to just realize how ed up the hero system is. I want to bring down the commission." Izuku was clenching his fists so hard, he was almost breaking his skin with his nails. "I want to destroy every inch of this system, reduce it to ashes." Izuku's emerald eyes glowed, as the light of the setting sun fell on his face. He stared deep into the vigilante's widened eyes as he stressed his next words. "I want them to burn." Stain was quiet for a few moments, watching Izuku intently. I knew I liked you for a reason, he finally said, surprising the teen. I caught you training with your friend a few times. You're very skilled with knives. He pointed his own weapon at Izuku as he spoke. I can teach you more than she can. Izuku's brain almost short-circuited when he realized what the man had just said. Did he just offer to train him? What the hell? You want to teach me? That's the reason you dragged me here. Izuku voiced his thoughts, not bothering to hide his wariness. Why? Stain hesitated a bit before answering, probably thinking over his words. I've been thinking about what you told me, last time we met. Especially about All Might. Izuku nodded. He figured the man would have to digest what he had revealed to him about his idol. He knew for experience how hard it was to have your whole world turn upside down, after learning the truth about your literal and metaphorical heroes. I think we have a lot in common. I find you worthy in this world of worthless heroes. Izuku suppressed an eye roll. It's not like he wanted or needed the man's approval, but it was a pleasant surprise. Himiko had blabbered about the vigilante for hours when he first told her about their meeting, and Izuku had come to appreciate his ideals and goals as well, albeit being in a gray zone about his methods. You don't have to join me in my work, Stain went on, as if reading Izuku's thoughts. That's not what this is about. But you show incredible promise. I want to help you in your goal. I can train you, teach you all I know. I have faith in your convictions, and your abilities, considering you got first place in UA's hero exam. Izuku wasn't even going to question how he had come to know that. Instead, he displayed a proud smirk. I can teach you about the underground, too, how it works. Connections, intel, the whole lot. You want to break down society. You're gonna need all the help you can get, more than what a hero school can give you. So, what do you say, kid? Izuku contemplated it. If he agreed, he would have one of the hero's most dangerous rising threats on his side, and if he ended up meeting the right people, he would have a significant advantage for his goals. He would have to be careful not to let out his identity as a hero student, though. Thankfully, he already had a villain alias, and making a name for himself as Light early on wasn't a bad idea in the slightest. As for the training he offered, Izuku would very much like to learn how to be as stealthy and sneaky as the hero killer. The man knew tricks that one couldn't easily learn if they weren't part of the underground, or at least a vigilante, as Stain had started as. Hero schools didn't focus on that kind of stuff, anyway. It was more likely he learned how to be flashy and cool there, rather than stealthy and effective, considering the amount of limelight heroes it produced, compared to underground ones. Izuku finally looked up to the hero killer, and with a new sense of determination, he got up. Okay. Stain gave him a huge grin, his unusually long tongue licking his lips. Well, then, let's get started. Stain was, surprisingly, a good teacher. For the past few days, Izuku had been meeting the vigilante every evening, after sunset. They had agreed to meet in the same alley. They sealed the deal, when it was dark enough for the man to train him while roaming the city, without people noticing them. When he told Himiko about the hero killer taking him under his wing, the day after, the girl was way beyond excited. She pestered Izuku to introduce them, as he was one of her idols. In the end, he couldn't go against his best friend's wishes, especially when she begged him with that cute face of hers, but he made her promise she wouldn't go all crazy on him. Izuku texted the man to meet him in Himiko's place earlier the next day, to introduce them, and the two really hit it off. Izuku watched in amusement as his friend and his mentor, as that was the vigilante was, bonded over their blood-related quirks, and the way they were shunned because of them. Izuku, of course, made a whole analysis on Stain's paralysis quirk, and made sure to ask him for details later. The three of them ended up having a heated discussion over their views on hero societies, fundamental decay, as the adult called it, and it was the most fun Izuku had in a long time. Being able to discuss his real views with people, without the fear of being criticized, gave him a sense of belonging. Needless to say, that day Izuku did barely any training. Stain made up for it the next few days, though. He showed him how to move inaudibly and conceal his presence, as well as how to patrol an area without being noticed. Izuku had requested he taught him stealth and sneak attacks first. He had been impressed by the hero killer's ability to sneak up to him without Izuku even registering another presence nearby, and he was fairly confident in his situational awareness, too. He had a lot to learn, and the man was more than willing to teach him. Izuku had asked his mentor to call him Light. He didn't want to be associated with the hero student Midoriya Izuku when he indulged in less legal activities, even if he wasn't doing anything outright illegal. Roaming around with the hero killer would be taken as such. He also figured he had to find a way to acquire proper attire for them. He couldn't use his hero costume, as it was kept in UA, but he wouldn't use it anyway, to avoid being recognized. He made a mental note to ask Jiren to get him a different costume. He still had a stack of hero analysis notebooks at home that he could give him in return. Speaking of, he didn't know where the broker had given or sold them, and he hadn't asked either. But Stain did tell him that word got out in the underground that info about heroes were circling around, and it would be a matter of time before a pro got attacked. The small part of Izuku that was feeling guilty over that happening was overshadowed by his actual resentment towards the heroes he had written about, and in the end, he wasn't responsible for other people's actions. On another note, Izuku continued his training with Todoroki at school. They were both comfortable doing their individual routines in silence, and spar during their gym classes. Izuku tried avoiding his other classmates as much as possible. He couldn't deal with their constant optimism and totally false view about their world. They were all so oblivious about what society really was like, it was driving him mad. He had managed to deal with All Might during the year he trained him, but 18 overly enthusiastic teenagers were too much. If his classmates noticed his reluctance to join them in any activity, or at the cafeteria during lunch, they didn't show it. Not while he was present, or when they thought he was, anyway. He had overheard some comments during lunch, when he usually sat alone at a corner, and utilizing his training with Stain to conceal his presence, about how he was overly shy and awkward, but also polite and kind and sometimes scary during his short outbursts, mostly regarding Minetta's behavior, but the girls didn't seem to mind. At least his fake persona worked, and they didn't suspect him for lying about basically everything and putting on a mask. Only Katsuki seemed to watch him when no one else paid him no mind, but since he knew Izuku since they were babies, it was logical to assume he had noticed something different about him. He had caught Katsuki's glare more than once, and the blonde immediately turned away, but Izuku could still tell his childhood friend was trying to figure him out. There was no way he actually would, though. He had also caught the eye of the purple-haired boy from General Education a couple times. He was always alone at lunch, too, usually at the bottom of a staircase, and it had crossed Izuku's mind to join him, before remembering Himiko's taunts that made him blush and walk away. He still gave the boy a nod or two when he saw him, if only for solidarity, not that the taller teen would know. Izuku had overheard kids gossiping about the lavender-haired teen, mostly about how he had a villain's quirk, and to stay away from him. It made Izuku's blood boil. No kid deserved to be shunned by his peers for their quirk, or lack of it, and it really hit close to home, seeing the teen all alone, avoiding the stares and whispers of his classmates. At least he wasn't receiving any physical repercussions for simply existing. Well, that was until Saturday, just 4 days before the sports festival. Chapter text. The moment the bell signaling the start of lunch period rang, Izuku took out his bento box, and skillfully slithered his way out of the classroom. He took out his phone as he crossed the hallways, and answered the texts he had received this morning but hadn't had the chance to reply. La Brava had texted him that she had successfully infiltrated the commission's database, and had his promised hard drive ready. She had really kept her promise of getting the job done in less than 2 weeks. Today was exactly 13 days after their meeting, and Izuku was even more impressed in his new friend's abilities. He had already seen what she was capable of, but this job definitely took the cake. They agreed to meet in the afternoon, after Izuku got off school, at the apartment where they met the first time. Izuku, having seen her messages as he got ready for school, had already taken with him his formal outfit for their meeting. He had grown to like the feeling of wearing a suit while doing business, as well as a notebook filled with ideas for Gentle's videos and whole pages dedicated to monologues for the villain to make during them. Although Izuku had already honored his part of deal, and was planning to continue working with them after this, he still felt like he wanted to give the villain a thank you gift. He also contacted Jiren about getting him a villain costume. During his training with Stain, he had been wearing a simple black outfit, sweatpants, a sweatshirt with the hood over his head, and a medical face mask, but it felt wrong. He felt like he should be wearing an actual costume, similar to his hero one, with a few alterations, of course. The broker asked Izuku to text him his exact requirements for it, and he would contact an associate to get it ready as soon as possible. He promised Izuku to get in touch when the costume was ready, and requested a couple of hero analysis notebooks for payment. Izuku turned off his phone, sat on the bottom of a staircase, as usual, away from the cafeteria, and started eating his homemade lunch in peace. He was getting better at concealing his presence, making use of his training with Stain, and was happy to see that students would pass by him without registering his presence or him staring at them. That skill really came in handy when he caught on half a dozen students harassing a classmate. Izuku had just swallowed the last bite of his bento, when he heard a group of kids snickering and dropping slurs and mean comments, as well as cries of pain. "A little birdie told me that you applied for the hero course, is that true?" "Dude, don't ask him questions. He could control you." "That's not how." The last person's sentence was cut off, with the sound of a punch and grunting. Izuku frowned. That voice seemed familiar, and his gut told him to go check out what was happening. He closed his bento box shut, left it on the bottom of the stairs to retrieve it later, and walked towards the noise, leading him to the nearest gender-neutral bathroom. "You can do so many bad stuff, you know. And no one would know it was you." Izuku saw a boy he vaguely recognized from the day the other courses had barricaded the 1A door, with flushed cheeks and a dreamy face that made the green-haired boy scowl in disgust. Izuku, still obscuring his presence, took a better look at the scene unfolding in front of him. Students he recognized from the Gen Ed course had surrounded the purple-haired boy he had gotten used to seeing in the hallways, and were using him as a tester punching bag for their quirks. One of the kids could sharpen their nails, their right index finger dripping with blood, while another had a rock quirk. Well, didn't that bring up some pleasant memories, and had apparently been punching the taller teen with quirked fists that were painted with blood. So was the purple kid's face. Izuku saw red. There was blatant quirk discrimination and bullying happening in UA grounds, and the school, that, knowing Nedzu, had eyes and ears literally everywhere, were doing nothing. How did a hero school allow such things to happen? Who knows how many times this had happened in the past and the teachers did nothing. There was no one else around, and it didn't seem like anyone was coming. Not that Izuku would wait for someone to show up. He activated his quirk, one for all coursing through his veins, and approached the assholes surrounding the kid. It took an incredible amount of self-control not to beat all of them to a pulp, but that wouldn't be very heroic, and he didn't want his persona to slip up and get in trouble with the school. Leave him alone. Izuku didn't bother concealing the venom in his tone, and most of the kids got the message and backed off with a frightened expression, recognition evident. One of them was not as smart. "Oh, come on dude, it's no biggie. He's basically a villain with that quirk." Izuku didn't let him finish his sentence. He punched the boy square on his nose, a deafening crunch echoing in the bathroom. It took all the self-control Izuku had to deactivate his quirk right before his fist connected to the asshole's face, otherwise he would have likely killed the kid. If he weren't in UA he probably wouldn't mind, either. Dude, what the shitbag wailed, but Izuku didn't relent. He activated his quirk once more and clenched his fists, glaring at the boy, burning holes in his skull. A girl with magenta hair took the crying asshole by the arm. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "He's the 1A prodigy. You don't mess with him." Oh, so he already had a reputation. That could prove useful. Izuku's eyes were wide with rage, his lips curled up just enough to show his teeth, and the green aura of full cowl glowed on his skin. "I won't ask again. Leave." All 6 students scrambled their way away, the girl all but dragging her friend as he cried and held his bleeding nose. Izuku watched them intently until they got out of sight, and then redirected his focus to the purple boy, who had fallen on the ground, next to the bathroom sink and was clutching his bleeding face. He was looking at Izuku with wide eyes. Well, His left one was concealed by his hand, a mix of fear and anger emanating from his curled-up body. Izuku deactivated his quirk, made his expression drop from scowling with malice and fury to a frown, his worry and empathy for the other teen genuine. He held out his hands, so they were visible, and walked towards him slowly. "You're hurt, can I see?" He crouched to the taller boy's level, but made no move to touch him. The teenager was clearly in pain, and was curling into himself like a wounded animal. He removed his hand from his bleeding face, but he still narrowed his eyes at Izuku when he offered to help. His voice was hoarse and got caught on a sob. He cleared his throat before speaking again. "Why would you help me?" Izuku would feel the mistrust and wariness radiating from the kid from miles away. "You were being beaten and I heard, I couldn't leave you." "No," he interrupted, "I meant why would you help me?" Izuku frowned. "Why wouldn't I? You were being hurt and mistreated, and no one else came to help." The boy's usually apathetic, bored-looking eyes started watering. "But why? I have a villainous quirk, I'm sure you've heard about it." He looked away as Izuku sat down in front of him, still not touching him, but close enough. "There's no such thing as a villainous quirk, Izuku tilted his head, silently asking for the teen's name. "Shinso. Hitoshi." Shinso looked like he was fighting back tears threatening to spill. "Shinso-kun, whatever your quirk is, it can't be villainous. Even if a villain used it, it's still a tool. And it doesn't excuse people beating you in a hero school bathroom." Izuku didn't hide his resentment. Being discriminated against just because of your quirk is inexcusable and wrong. "I'm sorry you had to go through this." Shinso was now quietly sobbing, from the pain, the shock, or Izuku's words, he wasn't completely sure. But he heard a soft, "thank you," between sobs, so the shorter teen took it as a win. "Can I see your wounds? I won't touch you if you don't want me to." Izuku stared at those beautiful amethyst eyes, before they turned away, and the boy nodded. Upon inspection, Shinso had a nasty gash over his left eye, but his eye didn't seem to have sustained any damage. There were ugly bruises forming on his other eye, jaw and cheeks, as well as a deep jagged cut on the right side of his jaw, just next to his chin. And those were only the ones on his face. When he received permission, he lifted Shinso's uniform, and held back a wince at the number of bruises he had all over his torso and stomach. "I could probably treat them on my own, but I'd have to back to my classroom to get my first aid kit, or we can go to Recovery Girl." Shinso shook his head as soon as the youthful heroine was mentioned. That was some trauma regarding school nurses, right there. Izuku could relate. "It's okay, I'll go and bring my stuff. I'll be back in a minute, can you wait?" As soon as he received a nod, Izuku bolted out of the bathroom, and ran towards the 1A classroom, taking his bento box from the ground on the way. He quickly got his medical supplies and left for the bathroom again, ignoring his classmates' questions and confused reactions. When he got back, the boy was exactly as he left him. Izuku closed the bathroom door for privacy, and sat next to the purple boy. They sat in silence as Izuku disinfected the boy's cuts on his face, and removed all the blood with a damp towel. Shinso thankfully could see normally from his left eye, but the cut across it would leave a scar, as the one on his jaw. Luckily, they weren't deep enough to need stitches, but Izuku could do them if it was needed. The gods know how many times he had to stitch himself. As he applied antiseptic cream on his face, Shinso broke the silence between them. "Why are you helping me?" It was said in a whisper, barely audible. Izuku frowned. "I told you, I saw you get assaulted and—" "No," Shinso interrupted him, shaking his head. "I mean now, you did your heroic act, you stopped them from beating me up." He said the last part ashamed. Izuku wondered if it was because he couldn't fight back, physically, or because he froze as a trauma response, because he surely had been bullied before Izuku knew how middle schoolers could be. Maybe both. The kid may be tall, but he was scrawny, and he didn't seem like he knew how to defend himself. "I didn't do it to be heroic," Izuku mumbled, as he covered the teen's cuts with gauze pads. "I just know what it's like, getting beaten up and not have someone help you afterwards." He gave Shinso a small, sad smile and proceeded to take a closer look of the boy's bruises on his torso. Shinso furrowed his brows. You've been bullied, too. Why, you're the 1A prodigy. Izuku gave a heartless laugh as he fixed the boy's costume. The bruises were many, but they didn't need any sort of treatment, except an ice pack, like the ones on his face. You'd be surprised, he said softly, before packing up his first aid kit. I've disinfected your cuts and applied gauze. You should change those at least once a day, and put ice packs on your bruises to reduce the swelling. Do you want a painkiller? I have some if you need them. Shinso nodded and accepted the tablets and a bottle of water, and Izuku got up and dusted himself off, just as the bell signaling the end of lunch period rang. I gotta go, Izuku said. If you need anything and don't want to go to Recovery Girl, come find me. Shinso watched him as he walked away. Wait, he called, making Izuku turn his head. The taller teen had gotten up, wincing, not surprising, considering the number of wounds and bruises he had sustained. He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't catch your name. Izuku. Midoriya Izuku. Thank you, Midoriya, for helping me. The boy seemed as awkward as the green-haired teen used to be. A light blush crept up Izuku's cheeks, and he turned his head as he started walking away. No problem, Shinso-kun. Chapter text. Right after school ended, Izuku took the train to Labrava's place, only stopping by the station's restrooms to change into his formal clothes. Looking at himself in the bathroom's mirror, Izuku was filled with pride. His suit was starting to look more like his size. He had purchased it a size bigger, so it would fit him after he gained more muscle mass, too. He still couldn't knot his tie correctly, but he chose to ignore it. No one had ever shown him how to do it, and he didn't really have a father anymore to show him stuff like that, anyway. He noticed his hair had gotten longer, too. He hadn't cut it in a while, but he didn't dislike it. He had found a spare hair tie of his mom's this morning in the bathroom, and the idea crept in his mind until now. Feeling experimental, Izuku tied the upper half of his hair in a small ponytail on the back of his head, and was honestly impressed with the result. It made him seem more professional, in a sense, compared to having bushy and unruly curls in random directions. He straightened his clothes, and confidently made the way out of the train station into Labrava's apartment. The hacker greeted him with a tight hug, and ushered him to her study, that was actually just a desk with all her computers and hacking-relevant electronic devices on the left corner of the apartment's master bedroom. Here, this is for you, Light. Labrava was practically vibrating in place, as she handed him a hard drive. This is everything I found in their database, including any and all heavily encrypted documents, as well as every email and letter sent to and from the Commission. I have all of them copied in a hard drive on my desk, just in case, but this is yours. Izuku's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, his bright smile almost filling the room with light. Thank you, Brava. I have a gift for you, too. She tilted her head as she frowned. What gift? You already paid me. She used air quotes, as her payment were basically notes. I know, but I still wanted to give you something extra. Izuku chuckled, taking out the notebook from his backpack. So, here you go. Izuku's smile widened as he watched the small villain's expression shift from curiosity to surprise, to enthusiasm. Her eyes were almost heart-shaped by the time she read it all, and they started watering as she looked at Izuku with a fond expression. Light-chan, thank you so much. He smiled earnestly, and then directed his focus on the hard drive in his hand. Oh, right, let me show you how I've organized them. Before she got to explain, Gentle Criminal came into the apartment, pleasantly surprised to see Light, the person who had already provided an infinite amount of help for his channel, even though they hadn't met in person yet. They introduced themselves properly, and Gentle left the two to their devices. After thanking Izuku profusely and offering a cup of tea, Izuku gladly accepted. Labrava proceeded to show him the amount of information in the drive, that was, in simple words, colossal. The hard drive had a maximum storage capacity of 100 terabytes, and it was nearly filled. The hacker had downloaded every single file on the Commission's database. That explained her more than usual dark circles, and she had done a first sweep of the files to sort them into vague categories, most of them already arranged by the Commission, some sorted by the young villainess. One folder, containing almost 10% of the drive's memory, was named Hawks. La Brava explained that when she skimmed through the files, she found very regularly the number 3 hero's name, sometimes accompanied by the name Takami Keigo, apparently his birth name, so she sorted all folders, documents, and emails referring to the wing hero into one big folder for Izuku to peruse. As Izuku went over the document titles, his anger and resentment towards the HPSC turned into pure fury. Child Soldier Program, Hero Assassinations, and cover-ups were only a handful of all the atrocities the Commission had perpetrated. Izuku could tell he was in for a headache that would at least a few weeks, as he sorted out all the documents. The whole deal with the number 3 hero especially had piqued his interest, and he decided he would be starting his research with that. He had to start somewhere, after all. After thanking the young villainess profusely, and promising to be in touch, he changed once again, this time in his workout outfit, and left to meet Stain for another training session. The hero killer decided he would be teaching him parkour today, and how to incorporate his stealth skills into navigating the city. He vowed to make Izuku a ghost, invisible, seen by none, feared by all. Izuku found out he really enjoyed roof hopping. The warm touch of the wind brushing his face while in the air, as well as the seconds of free falling, before his feet touched the ground, gave him a sense of peace and security he couldn't quite explain. Izuku's mind briefly wandered to a time where he was seeking that feeling, but for completely different reasons. A time where he wanted to feel the calmness and simpleness of the elements reign over his mind and body, giving him an escape of the torment that was his life. A time where he wanted everything to just stop, not because he didn't want to live, but because whatever followed would be a better alternative than the hell that was his pitiful excuse of a life. A time where he was just so tired, he wished he could just go to sleep and never wake up. Where he was sick of pretending, hiding, coming up with excuses for his wounds and smiling like he wasn't just told for the umpteenth time that there was no room in this world for someone like him. Where he begged and prayed and cried himself to sleep, pleading with the universe to grant him the one thing he wanted the most. The only thing that it deprived him of. A time that he'd rather tear his skin and stain his shower floor than remembering the harsh voices of his teachers and classmates, kindly reminding him of his useless existence. A time of tears and blood and silent screams under the blue light of midnight. But that was then, and this was now. Izuku wasn't that person anymore. That child died the day Katsuki told him to jump off a roof, and All Might left him on one. It was ironic, really, how it could have easily ended that day. How a simple step off the ledge would grant him the peace he craved for. Running through the city with his mentor, Izuku found himself on the very rooftop his destiny changed. He slowed to a stop, closed his eyes briefly and relished the light chill of the breeze ruffling his long curls. Looking down the streets from the rooftops gave him a new perspective. A sense of control. He was free, pulling the strings in his own life, changing the fate of the weak quirkless child he once was. He glanced at the hero killer, who was watching him with a curious look, a hint of worry in his expression. Izuku smiled and shook his head. Even though he wasn't falling, wasn't holding the metal that carved his skin, he could savor the peace the night was bestowing him. Izuku closed the door, took off his shoes, and quietly made his way to his room, all but flopping on the bed. His mom had already signed off for the day, and even though she was a heavy sleeper, he made sure to be as quiet as possible. He internally groaned as he realized he had to get undressed but really didn't want to bother. It wasn't very late, but the day had been quite eventful. After a brief dispute with the logical part of his mind, he conceded and got up to shower and get ready for bed. He wouldn't sleep immediately, though. The information the hard drive La Brava gave him contained was too tempting. He grabbed some potato chips from the kitchen to munch on while he did his work, and opened the laptop Jiren gave him. Opening the folder named Hawks, Izuku started reading the documents it contained, one by one, and organized them in his computer, while taking notes, so he could sort everything out effectively. During the following 4 hours, Izuku managed to make a timeline that was basically the number 3 hero's life, before and after the commission took him in. Takami Keigo was born on the island of Kyushu to Takami Tomi and her husband, Takami Yorua, a villain who was on the run for theft and murder. His parents, while being pursued, forced Keigo to stay at home at all times, hiding him from the rest of the world, to ensure he didn't rat out his father. Eventually, Yorua was caught and arrested by Endeavor, and Keigo, who was 7 years old at the time, and his mother were forced to flee their home to avoid getting arrested for harboring a fugitive, and lived on the streets. The HPSC took notice of Keigo when he intervened in a car accident and saved a bunch of people. They basically bought him off his mother, offering both of them compensation and protection so long as they abandoned the Takami name and enrolled Hawks in their child soldier program. At that point, Izuku had to stop reading for a while, to make some tea and collect himself. He didn't even want to get into their child soldier thing right now, that was a problem for another day. He only skimmed through some files to get the general idea, so he could make sense of Hawks's documents, and was almost relieved to see the commission had disbanded the program after the hero graduated, even though it had been running since before the hero was even born. Izuku was surprised to find out that Hawks was actually a heteromorph. Sure, he had his wings and the shape of his eyes were bird-like, but he didn't portray any animalistic behavior or characteristics. He wasn't surprised anymore, though, when he read that his caretakers trained his heteromorphic traits out of him, and put him on suppressants from the day they took him in. And as if that wasn't enough, when they eventually created their perfectly human child soldier, they made him forget his training to get rid of his animalistic traits, and even that he had any to begin with. The training had been so engraved into him, that he wouldn't even need to remember how to suppress any potential slip-ups. Hawks would just instantly correct any animalistic behavior he might present, without even remembering what he was correcting, or why. Apparently, the former commission president he was killed 7 years ago, Izuku would look that one up later, had a memory-altering quirk, whose effect stayed even after his death. He had used his quirk on all of the kids in their program to make them forget most of the shit they put them through, and basically shape them into puppets that wouldn't question them or their methods. Izuku's eyes started drooping as he started on the hero's training, so he decided to call it a night and continue tomorrow. It was Sunday, after all, and he'd have all day to get through more of the commission's bullshit. During the next couple of days, Izuku had read all there was to read about the Hero Commission's child soldier program. He made no attempt to hide his fury as he recounted his findings to Himiko and Stain, who were unfortunate enough to have him rant about them, on separate occasions. Izuku was so pent up, reading about literal children getting bought off their parents, and those were the lucky ones, or picked off the streets and put through such intensive training, that pro-heroes would struggle to follow. Izuku just had to rant about it. They had taken dozens of children, and raised them to believe they would make them into fine heroes. They put them through gruesome training, pushing them to their limits, and deaths, in no small number of cases. Children literally dropped dead from exhaustion or quirk overuse, and the commission discarded them like failed experiments. It was so ed up, Izuku didn't even want to recount the specifics of what the poor kids had to go through. It took great effort for him to go to school and pretend he was a happy-go-lucky heroic student who hadn't just read the most infuriating piece of information about how their beloved commission abused and killed children that weren't lucky enough to be in their place. Still, he put on his mask, smiled politely and avoided all confrontations he could. Well, not all confrontations. During lunch on Monday, Izuku's eyes absent-mindedly searched for a certain purple-haired boy, but came up empty. Shinso did gain a number of injuries when those assholes attacked him on Saturday, so it wouldn't be surprising he spent the next few days at home to recover. As he scanned the cafeteria for the Gen Ed student, Izuku noticed Todoroki eating alone, and his legs brought him to his classmate before he could even think about it. "May I sit here?" Izuku asked, bento box in hand. Todoroki, who was in the process of slurping a mouthful of his cold soba, looked up to him, noodles hanging off of his mouth. Izuku thought it was kind of adorable, and a little funny, how the boy slurped the rest of his noodles and swallowed while maintaining eye contact. The seat isn't taken. The two proceeded to eat their lunch in comfortable silence. The next day, Izuku found himself wandering in the cafeteria again, looking for the peppermint-haired boy. Todoroki spotted him only seconds after Izuku started heading for his table, and gave a nudge towards the empty seat across himself. Izuku didn't need to be told twice. Maybe this would become a habit, eating lunch with the number 2 hero's son, who didn't seem to enjoy being there more than Izuku did. A few minutes before the bell rang, Izuku was ecstatic to receive an update from Jiren, informing him that his villain costume was ready, and told him to come to his office, the place where they first met, to pick it up. It got Izuku quite perked up, Katsuki shooting glances at him like it was his business when Izuku was actually looking forward to something, and even Sue questioned his restlessness. He made up some bullshit excuse about being thrilled about the sports festival coming up, and everyone seemed to buy it, considering the event was tomorrow. After school, Izuku all but run to the train station to get home, change into his business outfit, take Jiren's payment, aka 2 notebooks, and took off to the broker's office. He casually entered the antique store he used as a front, the girl on the counter not giving him a second glance. Maybe she was informed he would be coming, and headed to the back and up the stairs to the office, just like weeks ago, when they made their first deal. It wasn't even a month ago, but so much had happened since then, it seemed like ages ago. Jiren was waiting for him inside, sitting on his desk, a cigarette between his lips. He was wearing a god-awful scarf, that looked like human intestines in both shape and color, that Izuku didn't bother hide his disdain for. "What the air you wearing?" "Well, hello to you too, Light." Jiren sported his usual grin, and took a briefcase from below the desk and placed it on top of it. "Straight to business, then." "The materials were a pain to get," he said as he opened the briefcase, revealing Izuku's, no, Light's, costume, along with an array of knives. "You're lucky I like you." "Whatever you say, Jiren." Izuku grinned as he traced his fingers on the black material. He couldn't wait to try it on. "Go on, try it," the broker said, as if reading his thoughts. "The changing rooms are down the hall, second door to the right." Izuku didn't need to be told twice. Jiren gave him some time to change, before getting in the changing rooms as well. Izuku was adjusting his utility belt on his waist when the man knocked. With Izuku's permission, he came in, and they both stared at the full-length mirror, admiring the result. The costume was all black, the material similar to his hero costume, weaved with Kevlar, fire and waterproof, impact absorbent, slice proof, all that jazz. It was two-piece, a tight sleeveless shirt with a hood and loose pants with knee pads. Both had enough pockets to store everything he might want to bring, some of them hidden for his smaller knives, while his utility belt held enough knife holsters for a small army. Thin black gloves went up to his elbows, bearing elbow pads and a couple knife holsters strapped on his forearms. His steel-toed boots, instead of dark red like his other costume, were dark green, with extra padding for stealth, and had hidden compartments for, surprise, more knives. The major difference with his hero costume was his face mask. Made of a sleek and thin dark green material, it went up to his nose, with a voice changer and sound muffler, for stealth mode, installed, as well as a smoke and gas filter. Izuku was grinning widely beneath it, exceptionally pleased with the result. "So, how do you like it?" Jiren asked, although, judging by his own expression, Izuku could tell he was impressed as well. Izuku's grin widened, threatening to split his face into two. "I love it." After leaving Jiren's office, Izuku headed towards his and Stain's usual meeting place, not bothering to change out of his new costume. His mentor barely realized it was him, but was pleased to see his disciple had requested so many knife holsters and compartments. After their training, Izuku dropped by Himiko's place to give her some food, and she wouldn't let him go, smothering him in hugs and good luck wishes for the sports festival tomorrow. She would be watching the event, most likely from the TV in her next victim's house, and she would be rooting for him all the way. Izuku was really happy, finally having the support system he always needed. Sure, he always had his mom, but she wouldn't exactly approve of his goals now. But Himiko, and Stain, they would both be supporting him, in anything, every step of the way. So how could he not give it his all, when he had the most important people in his life, having his back? Chapter text. When Izuku arrived at the UA entrance gate, he went into stealth mode and slithered his way between the crowd to the stage and into the waiting room for his class. There was a much bigger crowd this year, including both civilians and reporters. Class 1A, having been attacked by villains only 2 weeks ago, had attracted a lot of attention, and were bigger news than the third years, that were usually the media's main focus of the sports festival. For that reason, UA would host the festival on 3 separate days, each for every year. Today was the first year's turn, while on Thursday and Friday would be the second and third year's turns, respectively. As Izuku arrived at the changing rooms, he went to a secluded corner to change, just like always. Sure, his class now knew he and Katsuki had a rough history, but he still didn't feel like explaining their actual bully-victim relationship and the subsequent quirk-induced burns that littered his body, nor his self-harm scars. They may be aware that he grew up quirkless, and had a rough childhood, but he didn't feel like sharing that vulnerable part of himself, not if he could avoid it. After changing into his gym uniform, he joined his other classmates in their assigned waiting room. He heard a couple kids complaining about wanting to wear their hero costumes, but were forced to wear their gym uniform instead. Heroic students weren't allowed to have their costumes on, or bring any support items to the sports festival, in favor of being fair to the other classes. Izuku was standing against the wall in the corner of the room, his eyes closed, vaguely registering his classmates wondering what the first round will be, when he heard a familiar voice call his name. "Midoriya, can I talk to you for a second?" Todoroki asked in a calm tone, but Izuku could tell the boy was tense about something. What is it, Todoroki-kun?" Izuku didn't need to open his eyes to know that a few of their classmates had turned their attention on them, but he did anyway, if only to not be rude to the boy who was now standing in front of him. "Objectively speaking, I think I'm stronger than you." Izuku frowned. Yeah, probably." He really couldn't tell what Todoroki was thinking. "Even so, All Might has his eye on you, doesn't he?" Izuku barely managed to suppress a groan. He wasn't even surprised that one of the brightest students in his class had noticed the favoritism the number 1 hero was showing. Honestly, it was a miracle the whole school hadn't found out. The zygote couldn't keep a secret if his life depended on it. Even so, Izuku wasn't particularly willing to talk about his relationship with that sorry excuse of a hero. Thankfully, Todoroki didn't give him a chance to reply. "I'm not trying to pry. I just wanted to say, I'm going to beat you." The dual-colored teen looked almost sad, practically declaring war on Izuku in front of their class. There was something more to this than just a classmate being arrogant or overconfident in their abilities. Izuku tuned out the other students' exclamations and opinions on the whole thing, focusing on his classmate, who, behind that stoic and determined-looking expression, Izuku could tell was hiding some sort of desperation he couldn't quite understand. "Hey man," Kirishima butted in hesitantly, "don't go picking up fights, the event is about to start." "It doesn't matter." Todoroki shrugged him off, and started walking away. "I'm not here to make friends, anyway." He exited the room before anyone could reply, leaving a confused 1A, and an even more confused Izuku behind. Now, Izuku could have called him out, asked why he was declaring he would beat him, or even reply with a provocation of his own. Accept the challenge and say he would do his best. But, looking at the teenager's solemn expression, one that didn't comply with the distress Izuku was sure he was hiding, he decided he would talk to him later, away from the prying eyes of his classmates. Before he could dwell on it further, Present Mike's booming voice echoed through the speakers around the stadium, the crowd erupting in cheers. "It's time for the first-year students to enter the stage. Are you ready?" Mike proceeded to make a dramatic presentation of their class and the hardships they faced, as the students entered the stadium. Izuku noticed that the hero didn't add anything special to the other courses as he announced the arrival of the respective student body. Well, that wasn't biased at all. Izuku willed his face to remain neutral, as he walked. The stadium was huge, and filled to the brim with people. He still didn't do well with crowds, and he struggled not to wince and let the anxiety of thousands of people watching him get to him. His classmates' nervousness wasn't helping either. Instead, he focused on the students that were slowly entering the stadium after them. His eyes skimmed through the 1B hero students. He was already making guesses on their quirks. He would definitely be analyzing them as the festival went on, before his gaze landed on a familiar cloud of purple. Shinso was walking towards the center of the stadium, following the other general education students. Izuku was glad to see the injuries on his face had healed considerably, and the scarring was as bad as he initially thought, even though they were fairly prominent. The tall teen had his usual tired look on, but he also looked way more disheartened than what a Gen Ed student who aspired to get into the hero course via the sports festival would be expected to look like. He almost seemed like he would rather be anywhere else but here. All right, time for the student pledge. Midnight, who was assigned the role of an umpire, called out, drawing the attention of both students and spectators. Representing the students is Midoriya Izuku from Class 1A. Damn it. Izuku had totally forgotten about this. Since he scored first at both the written and the practical exam, he would be the one to deliver the opening speech. All Might had informed him last week, but with everything that had happened the past few days, it had completely slipped his mind. Izuku straightened his back and walked towards the podium with a neutral expression, not revealing the mess that was his brain right now, trying to form a speech in less than 30 seconds. All Might would want him to say, "I am here," and show the world the new symbol of peace. Izuku imagined himself doing his All Might impression, which was pretty spot on, if he said so himself, and the thought almost made him laugh. Yeah, no, that was not happening. If he was going to make an impression, he would be doing it in his own terms. He could bullshit his heart out, make an inspiring speech about the heroes in the making doing their best and giving it their all. But some part of him wanted to be sincere, stay true to what he believed. He wouldn't say everything on his mind, obviously, but he wanted to weave his speech with a hint of truth, while staying loyal to his heroics persona. He walked up to the podium, and accepted the microphone from the R-rated hero. He took a deep breath, put on a sweet smile and addressed the crowd looking at him in anticipation. Hello everyone. Welcome to the first year's sports festival. Everyone cheered. I'm Midoriya Izuku. If I'm being honest, I had forgotten I would be giving a speech, so I'm kinda improvising right now. He let out a chuckle and rubbed the back of his head, as the crowd laughed. I placed first in the written and the practical exam for the hero course. I'm not saying this to boast. He made a small pause. Ever since I was little, I wanted to be a hero. All my life, I've been told that I would never achieve anything, that my dreams are unattainable. That I should give up. Izuku briefly glanced at the students below him, seeing their mixed reactions. Most of his classmates, knowing his previous quirkless status, were looking at him with a mixture of pity, sympathy and pride. Katsuki, on the other hand, was staring at the ground with a tense expression. The rest of the student body were watching him with confusion and curiosity. Izuku turned his attention back to the crowd. And yet, I stand here today, giving a speech at UA's sports festival as the student representative. This is a message to everyone who has ever been discriminated. To everyone watching that has been bullied, abused, made fun of, and mistreated, for things out of their control. He searched for a camera and stared right into it as he stressed his next words. Your dreams are not unreachable. Don't let society tell you your goals are unrealistic. Izuku wondered whether All Might remembered what he had told him that day. Don't let those around you put you down, tell you who you are. Prove them wrong. Show them what you're made of. We can, and we will, make a difference. He turned to the students below him and smiled once more. So let's give it our all. Go beyond. Plus ultra. Everyone shouted the phrase with him, as he raised his fist into the air. The crowd cheered, and Izuku handed the microphone back to Midnight. Wow, Midoriya, you were so manly. Kirishima exclaimed as Izuku made his way back to his classmates. Yeah, so inspiring. Uraraka punched the air in excitement. I sure don't feel like it, Izuku mumbled, I hate crowds. Don't worry, Midori, Ashido reassured him, you were great. She went to hug him, but seeing the way he flinched, and probably remembering how he somersaulted Katsuki when he went to grab him after the quirk apprehension test, decided against it and gave him 2 thumbs-ups instead. He gave her a polite smile and turned his gaze towards Midnight, who was about to announce the first event. Let's get started, shall we? A hologram appeared behind her, drawing the lots. The events were all predetermined, and everyone watched in anticipation. The first event, is an obstacle course. She then proceeded to explain that the course would take place outside and around the stadium, as well as specify the rules, that were basically, anything goes as long as you stay on the course. The students gathered around the gate leading outside the stadium, which was kind of stupid, if you asked Izuku. They would all get trampled trying to take the lead and end up getting hurt. Izuku stuck to the back, if only to avoid getting stomped on and pushed around. Ready, start. At present Mike's signal, just as Izuku thought, everyone rushed forward, and started pushing each other in the narrow exit. Some of his classmates, most notably Katsuki, Aoyama and Yaomomo, used their quirks to propel themselves forward, while Todoroki used his ice to entrap the first wave of students and get ahead of them. Izuku activated full cowl, and jumped over the students and towards the wall. Using his legs to push himself from wall to wall, he made it to the exit in no time, and when he landed on the ground, he started running. The ground was covered in ice from Todoroki's quirk, but with the force of One for All on his feet, the ice shattered underneath him. Izuku deactivated his quirk. He didn't want to overuse it so soon. As he ran forward, when a wild robot appeared, he snickered to himself at his joke. And it was not just one, but a whole bunch of the zero-pointers, and some of the smaller robots from the entrance exam. Every student that had caught up to them had stopped in their tracks, seeing the huge automatons, ready to charge at them. Izuku didn't hesitate to repeat his actions from the entrance exam, without breaking his bones this time, and with a grin on his face, he activated his quirk. A strong wave of deja vu hit him as he jumped to one zero-pointer's level and punched it with enough force for it to lose balance and fall backwards. Izuku landed on the same robot as it descended, and safely made it to the ground before he started running again. In the meantime, Todoroki had used his quirk to freeze all the remaining zero-pointers and ran after Izuku as they came crashing down. Izuku could vaguely hear present Mike's commentary, with the occasional observation and remark from Aizawa, who had apparently been dragged to the announcer's booth, too. The next obstacle was a pitfall, a really deep, kinda scary pit that Mike introduced as the fall. Izuku didn't have much experience yet, but during his training with Stain, they would run across the city, and more specifically, on the rooftops. Of course, Izuku hadn't parkoured on skyscrapers, nor on buildings with that much of distance between them, as the pieces of land scattered across the pit did, with only ropes connecting them. He had, however, been feeling pretty confident today, dare he say brave, almost. And so, Izuku activated full cowl once again, mustered all his strength and training he had with his mentor so far, and started running towards the pit. His quirk allowed to leap over the gaps and onto the aisles of land. It was like an extravagant version of roof hopping, jumping from aisle to aisle, his quirk providing the power needed to cross the distance. Alongside him were Su, who was hopping on the ropes, Katsuki, who was using his explosions to fly over the whole area, and a pink-haired girl with gadgets strapped on her person. Was it her quirk? Or maybe she was from the support course, that seemed more likely, and Todoroki, who was sliding on the tightropes with his ice, almost like an ice skater, a thought that nearly caused him to fall in the pit. After he cleared the obstacle, Izuku continued running through the course, right behind Todoroki and Katsuki along with a few other students, not particularly interested in beating them and coming first. After a couple of minutes, he heard present Mike announce the final obstacle, a minefield. Bruh, they had literally planted bombs. Well, not actual bombs, but they could seriously hurt someone. Some students had already attempted to weave their way through the mines, and they had been blown up to the air. Even if they didn't outright hurt them, falling to the ground from the height they reached would definitely end up injuring them. Most students that had reached the minefield were carefully treading through, but every now and then, someone would get blasted upwards, or backwards, depending on the angle they stepped on the bomb. Izuku decided to get creative. At that moment, he saw Yaomomo passing, and asked her for a favor. He promised to return it after the festival, and even though she was very confused, honestly, who wouldn't be if they were asked to make a snowboard in the middle of an obstacle course, she actually went through with his request. Perfect. Next, he started digging up some of the bombs. Most students had been particularly careful in the beginning of the minefield, giving him enough of them to work with. He ignored the stares and perplexed glances of his classmates and started making a pile of the bombs he gathered. He figured, if one was to step on a mine and be flung backwards, if done correctly, one could also be flung forwards. And what better way to do so than with the force of multiple, non-lethal bombs? After he collected enough of them, he loosely strapped his feet on the snowboard bindings, praying to whoever God was listening that this worked. He had never snowboarded before, but it was never too late to try, right? Yeehaw mother, he whispered, before jumping onto the pile of bombs. He could see the shell-shocked expressions of his classmates who were all, almost comically, following his trajectory with wide eyes and open jaws. Izuku started laughing as he soared through the air, crouching and holding the board so it wouldn't turn over, but was still paying attention to where he was, hopefully, going to land, which happened to be Katsuki's face. Katsuki and Todoroki, who were apparently in the middle of a fight over who would be coming first, were both gawking at him, before getting out of their trance and started sprinting forwards, using their quirks in their advantage. At that point, Izuku was descending, and as he got closer to his two classmates and to the end of the minefield, he unstrapped the bindings, and right before landing, he held the snowboard, in hopes to use the force of the mines he landed on to propel himself forwards once more. Miraculously, it worked, and it gave him enough momentum to get past the minefield and onto the ground. He landed with a smooth roll, just like Stain had taught him, and sprinted towards the end of the course. He could hear Katsuki shouting his stupid nickname, and that was enough for Izuku to start running faster. If winning this course meant hurting Katsuki's ego again, just when the blonde thought he was going to win, he would take the chance and win. And win he did. The first student back in the stadium is Midoriya Izuku, Mike announced through the speakers. The crowd raved, and Izuku reveled in it. He had just won the first event of the infamous UA Sports Festival, on live television, for the whole world to see. Maybe he would regret this decision later, but right here, right now, he let himself enjoy the thrill of being recognized, being congratulated for his own feats and his own efforts. Catching his breath, Izuku looked back at the entrance of the stadium, where students were coming through one by one. He took great pleasure in seeing Katsuki fuming and having another existential crisis over losing to Izuku, again. Todoroki was also catching his breath, but Izuku also noticed he was exhibiting signs of hypothermia. Could be a drawback to his quirk, considering how powerful his ice was, but if so, why wasn't he using his fire to counter it? Now that Izuku thought about it, he had never seen Todoroki use the fire aspect of his quirk, neither in heroics classes, nor when they sparred together the past 2 weeks. Well, wasn't that concerning? Before he could think about it further, Izuku heard Uraraka calling his name. Midoriya-kun, you were amazing. Thank you, Uraraka-san, you were amazing too. He gave her a polite smile, and turned his attention to Midnight, who was announcing the results of the first event. The top 42 makes it through to the next round. But for those who didn't make it, don't worry. We've prepared other chances for you to shine. The hero licked her lips seductively, which Izuku found really disturbing. Yes, she was the R-rated hero, and it was part of her persona, but they were teenagers. Now, here's the second game. The hologram behind her stated the next event, gaining mixed reactions from the students. A cavalry battle, Midnight announced. She then proceeded to explain how the game worked, as well as how the points of each student were assigned, depending on the results of the previous game. And the point value assigned to first place is, oh, no. Izuku didn't like where this is going. 10 million. God-ing damn it. Everyone was looking at him like he was some sort of prey. It makes sense, if anyone got his headband, they would automatically place first and guarantee their place in the final event. Now, you have 15 minutes to build your teams. Start. Izuku skimmed through the students, considering their quirks, strengths and weaknesses, trying to form a plan. Ideally, his team would specialize in defense, so it would be harder for the other teams to steal their headbands. He also needed a person that would help in offense, mostly to keep the other teams away, and steal a headband or two, for good measure. Even if someone ended up getting the 10 million point band, he still wanted to have enough points to pass. The only problem was, No one wanted to team up with him. He wouldn't blame them. Keeping a headband for the whole duration of the game seemed much more difficult and a pain than actually trying to steal it. Midoriya-kun, Uraraka's voice sounded from behind him. Let's be a team. Oh, are you sure? He was pleasantly surprised to see the girl actually approach him. She had actually made quite a few attempts to talk and hang out since the first day of school, but he always avoided it. She was very kind and sweet, but also too enthusiastic with heroics, like most of his class, and Izuku avoided them whenever he could. Everyone will be coming after me. Of course. Besides, it's better to team up with people you get along with, right? Well, if getting along meant being friendly and polite, then sure, they got along. Okay, in that case, we need someone to help with defense. If we use your quirk to make us lighter, it will be easier to maneuver the team and avoid the others as much as possible. I see. You're so smart, Midoriya-kun. She gave him a bright smile, and he gave her a polite one in return, before they started looking for people who wanted to team up with them. Iida refused, saying that he saw him as a rival, and wanted to challenge himself. So did Todoroki and most of their class, and Katsuki wouldn't even think of teaming up with him for any reason whatsoever. Izuku had almost accepted it would be just the two of them, and he would have to figure out a plan to make it through with just Uraraka, when he saw a girl with pink dreadlocks, that he vaguely remembered seeing at the pitfall from the obstacle course, coming towards him. She had a pair of goggles on her face, and numerous gadgets on her body and head. Team up with me, person in first place, she exclaimed, getting right on his face, making Izuku take a step back. I'm Hatsume Mei, from the support course. I don't know you, but let me use your position. Oh, that made sense. I'm Midoriya Izuku. You want to use me to attract attention and show off your support items, right? Izuku asked, hoping it didn't come off too insensitive. He had heard that, just like the hero students were doing their best to draw the pro heroes' attention, the support course could advertise their inventions so that support companies would take notice of them. It was a solid strategy, and Izuku respected it. Yeah, you get it. You will be the team everyone's watching the most, and then the big companies will be watching me and my babies. She was invading his personal space as she spoke, making Izuku place a hand on her shoulder, which she didn't seem to notice, too fired up talking about her babies, probably meaning her inventions. Okay, sure, Izuku grinned. The girl kind of reminded him of Himiko. They both had the same gleam in their eyes, talking about something that excited them. Great, don't worry, I think you will also benefit from this alliance. Hatsume proceeded to present a suitcase. Where was she even hiding that? With a variety of support items. I have tons of babies, I'm sure you'll find one that you like. As Izuku skimmed through the items, his eyes landed on something that looked like a jetpack. Oh, did this catch your eye? I made it based on a certain hero's backpack, adding my own original twist to it. As she explained the functions of her jetpack, he started forming a solid plan. He just needed another person to help them with a fence. He scanned the students that didn't have a team yet, and his eyes landed on the perfect person for the job. Let's hear those battle cries. Present Mike shouted through the speakers. It's time for battle. Chapter text. The cavalry battle went smoother than Izuku expected. Izuku's team, consisting of himself as the rider, Uraraka and Hatsume as the wings, and Tokiyami as the horse, mainly relied on defense. Izuku would flick his fingers while having full cowl activated to send back the teams that pursued them, and the other three would navigate the whole team around the arena. At first, almost every team went after his, but thanks to Uraraka's gravity quirk making them float, Hatsume's jetpack providing airborne maneuverability, and Dark Shadow defending and attacking any team that got close enough to try and steal their headbands, they managed to make it through without losing a single one. They even stole a couple, and even came close to take Todoroki's. The Fire and Ice user had cornered his team, trapped them with his ice a couple minutes before the end of the battle, and almost stole their 10 million points. As the two teams clashed again, Team Todoroki still aiming for Izuku's headband, the one-for-all user activated his quirk, and Todoroki used his fire in defense, before Present Mike declared the end of the battle. The top 4 teams were the ones that would proceed to the final event. Team Izuku took first place, Todoroki's was second, Katsuki's was third, and at fourth place was, surprisingly, Shinso's. Now, we'll take an hour-long break for lunch, before we start the school festivities. Mike announced, and Izuku wasted no time. He thanked his classmates and Hatsume for their help, and bolted out of the arena. Before he could make it to the changing rooms, though, he heard Todoroki calling his name. Midoriya, I need to talk to you. Again. Okay. Is everything all right? Todoroki didn't respond, he instead guided him somewhere more private. Even after they came to a stop in a hallway, the heterochromatic boy still didn't speak. Izuku frowned. Todoroki's usual apathetic expression was exhibiting a mixture of confusion, frustration, and pain. What is it, Todoroki-kun? The boy didn't answer for a few seconds, and Izuku almost thought they would be having a staring contest, but eventually Todoroki sighed and looked at the floor. Because of you, I broke my pledge. Izuku's brow furrowed, but he didn't reply, waiting for the other team to continue. I had promised to myself I would never use my fire, but at that moment, I was overpowered. I could feel the intensity of your quirk. At the USJ, I witnessed All Might's power. Yours is similar. Oh shit, had he figured out the true nature of their relationship? Izuku wouldn't be surprised if more people had realized All Might had a special interest in Izuku, but someone finding out the truth would be bad news. Todoroki looked up to Izuku, his gaze filled with such intensity, Izuku was getting nervous. Are you All Might's secret love child, or something? Izuku choked. All Might's secret love child. The teen started coughing violently while laughing. Oh, that was gold. His laughter echoed in the hallway, and as his coughing died out, tears started springing to his eyes. His belly started hurting, he hadn't laughed like this in so long. Oh, no. Seeing Todoroki's serious but confused expression only made him laugh more, and by that point he was basically crying. I'm sorry, Todoroki-kun, that really caught me off guard, Izuku said after he somewhat calmed down, wiping the tears from his eyes. No, I'm not All Might's son. My father is an asshole who left when I was 5. Todoroki's eyes narrowed, but said nothing. Izuku tried really hard not to burst out laughing again. Even so, you have some sort of connection to him. Isn't that right? Izuku sighed. Yes, I do. Todoroki seemed surprised at his straightforward answer, but didn't reply, waiting for his classmate to elaborate. You know I got my quirk late, right? And it's pretty similar to All Might's. The other teen nodded. He saw my footage from the entrance exams, and volunteered to train me. He helped me adjust, get used to my quirk and figure out a way to not break my bones every time I used it. Izuku patted himself on the back. He came up with the lie on the spot, but laced it with enough truth to be believable. Still, part of him felt bad for lying. Not about the lying itself, but lying to Todoroki. I see, the boy seemed to gather his thoughts before looking up to Izuku again. Even so, your connection to All Might is more than enough of a reason for me to beat you. There it was again, the sadness and desperation he was giving off when he was practically declaring war this morning. Why? Izuku felt like he was missing something. Something that was right in front of his face and he couldn't see, and it irritated him to no end. What do you mean? Why is my connection to All Might that important? Why is that the reason you want to beat me? Izuku questioned. He let the other teen think his answer through, and watched his expression shift from intense and downhearted, to sorrowful, but also, angry. Izuku was having a hard time interpreting the boy's emotions. To an untrained eye, he would seem stoic and apathetic, but Izuku, who was usually adept at reading other people's emotions, could pick up on the subtle changes on the other teen's face. Sometimes though, his expressions were hard to decipher. My old man has a strong desire to rise in the world, to be the number one, Todoroki started, after a minute of silence. He made a name for himself and rose through the ranks, but All Might, the living legend, always bested him. And when he couldn't surpass him, he moved on to the next plan. He then looked at Izuku in the eyes, and uttered the next words with such venom, Izuku couldn't help but share the sentiment. Have you ever heard about quirk marriages? The teen proceeded to tell his story, one of pain, blood and tears. A story of anger and violence and death. As Izuku listened, he could only describe what he was feeling as pure and indisputable fury. Izuku already disliked the number 2 hero. He had seen the statistics, the ITY of his arrests. He knew of the kill-to-capture ratio, the collateral damage, the injured civilians who just happened to be in Endeavor's vicinity. He had read about his eldest son's quirk accident, that the commission had covered up, but he hadn't expected the truth that was Todoroki Tsuya's tragic existence. A boy with a fire quirk stronger than his father's, raised to be greater than him. Only to be rejected, when his flames started consuming him. Having inherited his mother's ice constitution, his quirk was not compatible with his body. Still, the boy tried his best to please his father, being told all his life that surpassing him was his purpose in life. Until he pushed himself too far, and burned to death by his own power. Even so, Endeavor showed no pity towards his wife, who had to grieve her eldest, and mourn the childhood her youngest would never have. He showed no parental love to his second son and only daughter, only seeing them as failed experiments. He showed no mercy to the child he called his masterpiece, training him to a legacy he never asked for, to be someone his father created him to be. My mother, she couldn't handle the stress of being a literal baby machine, making child after child, just to be discarded as a failure. Until I was born, but even then, in all my memories of her, she is always crying. The teen cupped the left side of his face, when the scar on his eye was. She called my left side unbearable, before she poured boiling water on my face. Izuku's breath hitched. Holy, that was so ed up. He couldn't exactly blame the poor woman. She had obviously been so traumatized, and her mental health had deteriorated to the point she thought her own son, or his left side, was her abuser, and she ended up burning him. Wait, burning? Wasn't Todoroki's left side fire resistant? Just like his right side was ice resistant, high temperatures shouldn't do any damage. Oh, his mom had an ice quirk. She must had realized what she'd done and tried to help with her quirk. It was an ice burn. The heroes failed you, too, didn't they? Izuku murmured. Izuku looked up at the boy's face, realizing he had said that out loud. Oh, shit, he had just confessed heroes had failed him. Yes, I suppose they did. The other teen looked surprised at his question, but he actually answered. And agreed. This is why I have challenged you, Todoroki continued. I wanted to show the old bastard what I can do, and I'm going to win this festival without using his quirk. It's not his, though, Izuku argued. Mismatched eyes widened, staring into his own. It's not his quirk, it's yours. Izuku felt great sympathy for the other teen, who seemed greatly confused. He didn't blame him. His whole existence was the product of his sperm donor's ed-up desire to make the perfect hero with two powerful quirks, one being his own. It was no surprise Todoroki didn't view half of his quirk as his own. It was literally the perfect hybrid, half fire, half ice. And Izuku would be damned if he didn't try and change his mind. Just like the ice aspect of your quirk isn't your mother's, your fire isn't his. Your eyes are not theirs, they're yours. Same thing with your hair color. You are your own person, Todoroki-kun, not the sum of your parents' characteristics. Todoroki stayed quiet for a few moments, processing. He was clenching and unclenching his fists, his lips pursed into a tight line. Izuku had probably just ruined his whole worldview and given him an existential crisis. Whoops. He didn't regret it, though. It's just food for thought, Izuku finally said, seeing the boy struggling. You don't have to use your power if you don't want to, but it is your power. Just think about it. I'm not using it, Todoroki stated as a matter of fact. I'm going to beat you, Midoriya. I'm going to show him I can win this without his fire. Look, I don't really care about winning the festival. I've probably gained more attention than I'd like already. Izuku shrugged. I don't want to be a limelight hero, he explained, seeing Todoroki frowning in confusion. Or any type of hero, but we're not getting into that right now. But you do, so you should give it your all. Todoroki didn't respond, his gaze stuck on the ground. Izuku decided to leave him alone and give him some time to process, think things through. Izuku had stuff to think about, too. He dropped by the locker rooms to get his bento box and sat on the bottom of a staircase to eat his meal in peace, while he contemplated the conversation he just had. Of all the things he expected to happen today, Todoroki trauma dumping wasn't one of them. Still, he was glad the other teen trusted him enough to share his story. And what a story it was. Now that he knew the truth about the flaming garbage that called himself a hero, Izuku would have to do extensive research about him. This seemed much more urgent than sorting out Labrava's hard drive. If Todoroki's claims were true, which Izuku was sure they were, who knew what other atrocities the flame hero had committed, that the HPSC had shoved under the rug. The number 2 had led his eldest son to his death, and Todoroki surely had received incredible abuse in the name of training, in order to become his masterpiece. Todoroki didn't go into details about himself and his own experiences, but Izuku felt an urge to protect him. To take him away from his abuser. Maybe he was overstepping boundaries, but if he didn't do anything about it, no one else would. Now that lunch is over, it's finally time to reveal the final event. Mike announced once the students were back in the stadium. But before that, there's good news about those who didn't make it to the finals. It's just a sports festival, after all. We've prepared recreational games that everyone can participate in. Cheerleaders, that had apparently come from America, started, well, cheering, signaling the beginning of the games. Izuku was glad to see the girls from his class were not among them. He had overheard Mineta explaining to them earlier, during lunch, that all the girls were supposed to wear cheerleader outfits for a cheer battle, and that Aizawa himself had said so. Kaminari was also there, nodding along. Izuku could smell the bullshit from a mile away, so he walked up to the group and casually asked what the great pervert was talking about. The little shit had obviously not expected his appearance, but tried to explain, hoping he would convince Izuku to go along with it. Izuku, who strongly despised objectifying teenage girls, but was also very gay, had no interest in seeing his female classmates in revealing cheerleader outfits. With the fakest smile he could muster, he said, "I'm sure Aizawa-sensei wouldn't mind confirming this, right? In fact, I'll call him right now." He made to take his phone out of his pocket, and the two boys started sputtering something about being confused and that it wasn't necessary and whatnot. Izuku then crouched to Mineta's level, still smiling, and whispered, "If you ever attempt tricking the girls like this again, I'll make sure you wish you were born blind." Izuku must have put the fear of God in him, and started snickering when Mineta all but cried and run away, Kaminari following him, visibly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Yaomomo thanked Izuku for intervening, relieved that she didn't have to make and/or wear cheer outfits, while Sue pointed out how outright scary the green-haired boy could be sometimes. Izuku just shrugged it off, content to have helped. He wasn't actually going to turn Mineta blind, but he sure was tempted to. Present Mike then explained the basics of the final event, a one-on-one tournament, and Midnight started drawing the lots to decide the pairings. Before she had the chance, though, Ojiro declared he was withdrawing from the tournament. "I barely remember anything from the cavalry battle," he replied to his classmates' questioning. "It must have been that guy's quirk." Izuku followed his furious and disgusted glare, landing on Shinso. "Oh, that's right. The Gen Ed students team was the one who placed fourth in the second event." The purple-haired boy avoided his gaze, clearly embarrassed, but Izuku could tell he was also downhearted. "I know this is a great opportunity," Ojiro continued, "and that it's foolish of me to waste it, but everyone here competed by giving their all. I don't want to pass to the final game without even knowing what really happened." Izuku tuned out his classmates' objections and instead focused on the lavender-haired teen. He was slouching more than usual, and looked like he was trying to hide from the numerous revolted glares he was receiving from everyone around him. Izuku could hear whispers from students, not really bothering to be subtle about their opinions on the boy and his villainous quirk. How dare he use a quirk like that? Who does he think he is? He's a villain, tricking hero students like that. Izuku's mind briefly replayed the events from just a few days ago, Shinso being surrounded by his classmates, face bleeding and broken and scarred, and Izuku was furious. He was furious that a hero school allowed this to happen. That a kid like him was being beaten for nothing more than the nature of his quirk. That the same kid was now receiving dirty looks and harmful words and was being avoided like the plague, like he was a monster. Izuku was furious, but he was also among hero students, participating in a sports festival being broadcasted to all of Japan. So he bit his tongue and summoned all the self-control he had to make his face remain stoic, as another member of Team Shinso also withdrew from the tournament. 2 1B students, Tetsu and Shiozaki, took the empty slots. Izuku didn't bother paying attention to how that was decided, and Midnight finally drew the lots and announced the pairings for the first round. Izuku would be going first, against Shinso. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. Present Mike announced the beginning of the recreational games, that Izuku had no interest in participating, and instead withdrew to a quiet area to let off some steam. Before he had the chance, though, Ojiro's tail flickered in front of him. Midoriya, wait. Izuku turned to face the other team, raising an eyebrow. I need to talk to you. Ojiro led him to their class's waiting room, and proceeded to warn him about Shinso's quirk. His quirk, it controls people. I don't remember anything after I answered his question, so I think that's how he does it. Ojiro was scowling at the memory of being under the influence of Shinso's quirk, and he didn't bother hiding his disgust while talking about it. I snapped out of it at some point, though. When Shinso, he practically spat the name, took Tetsu's headband, I bumped into Shiozaki. I think you can snap out of his control with an outside force, but you shouldn't rely on that in a one-on-one match. Izuku's expression remained neutral, but he didn't speak, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Midoriya, that quirk, it's villainous. Don't let him control you. And there it was. Honestly, he should have expected it. The tail-quirked student was usually humble and polite, but Izuku knew better than to get his hopes up. He was just like the rest of them. You know, you really shouldn't judge someone for their quirk status. He got up and didn't wait for the other student to respond. Even if you do, keep your opinions to yourself. Don't go bad-mouthing people just because their quirk is different. Especially not to someone who has been mistreated his whole life for being quirkless. Ojiro paled when he realized to whom he was talking to, and making discriminatory comments. He started sputtering apologies, but Izuku had no interest in hearing them. Not trusting himself to not punch his classmate square on the nose, he left the room, heading for a more secluded spot to spend the hours leading up to his first match. All right, people. The first match of the one-on-one tournament is about to begin. Present Mike announced. Are you ready? The crowd roared, making Izuku a tad more nervous. A whole stadium would be watching him, never mind the thousands of people watching from home, and would be focusing solely on him and his match. First, the boy that placed first in the entrance exam, Midoriya Izuku. Present Mike introduced, as Izuku made his way towards the arena. Versus the mysterious general ed student, Shinso Hitoshi. The purple-haired boy was drooping as he walked, eyes glued to the floor. He looked like he was regretting every life decision that led him to this moment. The rules are simple. Force your opponent out of bounds, or immobilize them. You can also win if you make your opponent say, I give up. Bring on the injuries, we've got our own recovery girl on standby. Put your morals aside for a moment. Of course, anything life-threatening is not allowed. Heroes should only use their fists to catch villains. Izuku suppressed a groan. This whole speech was so wrong, he didn't know where to begin. Firstly, promoting violence between students just for a show was ed up. It didn't matter that they had a healer on standby, the students would still be in pain until the match was over. They were allowed to seriously maim their classmates, putting their morals aside, again, just for a good show. What kind of hero school promoted that kind of thinking? And people were okay with this. Of course they were, it was just an event, after all. Also, using deadly attacks was prohibited, unless they were directed towards villains. Because killing wasn't okay, unless it was for catching bad guys, regardless of their crime. That kind of mindset was the reason heroes like Endeavor existed. Ready, begin. Izuku walked towards his opponent, having decided to fight quirkless in this match. Shinso didn't have a physical quirk, and Izuku thought it would be unfair to him to use his literal super strength, when the boy could hardly defend himself. Of course, what happened a few days ago, when his classmates grouped up and assaulted him, wasn't the same thing as an actual battle, but Izuku doubted he knew how to fight. I give up. Huh. Izuku stopped in his tracks when the purple-haired boy started talking. This is a fight to test the strength of your spirit. If you know what you want for your future, you can't worry about appearances. Izuku blinked in confusion. What was he on about? That monkey was going on about his pride, he continued, but don't you think he was dumb for throwing away his chance? Oh, Izuku understood now. His quirk was response-based. He was trying to get Izuku to answer him to take control of him. Well, as much as Izuku agreed with him, he knew better than to fall for his taunts. He felt rather bad for the boy, having been paired up with himself in the first round. Izuku had more than enough practice in controlling his emotions to slip up in a situation like this. Izuku started walking towards him once more, his lips sealed. Shinso's eyes widened, and tried another tactic to get him to respond. You're lucky you have been blessed, Midoriya. You probably won't understand, but even with a quirk like mine, I still had a dream. Wait, had. Because of my quirk, I've always been left behind. Someone blessed like you can't understand, can you? Oh, Izuku understood, more than understood. He could feel what Shinso was saying deep in his bones. Being quirkless, but still having that stupid dream of being a hero. Still, he kept his mouth shut, and got even closer. Shinso looked even more nervous, and took a sloppy defensive stance. Present Mike, who was providing commentary from the beginning of the match, explained the nature of Shinso's quirk to the understandably confused spectators, earning gasps and whispers in response. Someone like you, who was born with the ideal quirk, will never understand. At that, Izuku snorted. It probably didn't count as a response, but even if it did, the taller teen seemed too flabbergasted to activate his quirk. Izuku would be, too. Izuku took advantage of his startled reaction, and started pushing him towards the edge of the platform. Say something. Shinso went for a weak punch to the face, but Izuku stopped it with his hand, and made an apologetic expression before using a swift move to throw him off balance, and pushed him backwards. Shinso is out of bounds. Midnight announced. Midoriya advances to round 2. The crowd roared, way too enthusiastically for a boring match like this one. Izuku could hear people shouting things like, "Show him his place," and, "Take that, villain." That made Izuku livid. Shinso didn't deserve that, no one did. Izuku tuned everyone out, and focused on the boy laying on the ground in front of him. He extended his arm, silently offering to help him stand up. The other teen hesitantly took him up on his offer, but before Izuku could say anything, he turned and walked away from the arena. As he passed beneath the stands where their classmates were seated, several Gen Ed students started shouting at him, throwing slurs and mean comments like their lives depended on it. Even some pro-heroes, that have been attending the festival, probably to scout for interns, were discussing the villainous nature of his quirk, and were wondering if the kid actually intended to be a hero. Shinso kept his head down and dragged himself into the changing rooms. Shinso-kun, wait. Izuku followed him, ignoring the protests and warnings of his classmates, and caught up to the boy right as he walked into the changing rooms. Shinso-kun. The teen had obviously heard him, since he left the door open for Izuku to enter, but didn't turn to look at him. Instead, he sat on a bench, his back to Izuku, and rested his forearms on his knees and his face on his hands. Izuku quietly closed the door and approached the taller boy. He sat on the bench next to Shinso, leaving enough space between them so the other boy wouldn't feel too uncomfortable. The purple-haired teen didn't say anything, so Izuku took a deep breath and voiced his thoughts. Shinso-kun, I just wanted to say, Izuku licked his lips, trying to find the right words, I don't believe any of the things the others are saying. He spared a glance to the other boy, who remained silent, before continuing. Everything they are saying about you, they're wrong. I meant what I said the other day. Judging you and mistreating you because of your quirk, because of something you can't control, is just wrong. Still no response. Calling you a villain just because your quirk could be used for villainy is just plain stupid. If anything, they are the ones acting like villains. At that, Shinso's head snapped towards Izuku, wide violet eyes staring into emerald ones, unshed tears threatening to spill. They both barely registered the crowd cheering over the next match. I'm really sorry you're being treated like this, Izuku continued, a small empathetic smile on his lips. No one should have to go through that. Silent tears started streaming down Shinso's face. Do you really mean that? His voice was so soft, so broken, it shattered Izuku's heart. It reminded him of himself, every time the kids at school told him he was worthless, that he was better off dead. That he should kill himself so no one had to bother with him in his pathetic existence. Of course I do, Izuku said softly. I know what it's like, being treated like the scum of society. How could you possibly know what it's like? Shinso interrupted him, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. You're the 1A prodigy. You have the perfect quirk, meant for a hero. He let out a short, mirthless laugh. How could you possibly understand what I've gone through? Izuku knew that it wasn't personal. That Shinso wasn't bitter towards him, but towards the society that treated him this way. Izuku knew that, but still, insinuating he had the perfect life, because he now had the perfect, heroic quirk, lit a spark that he couldn't ignore. You don't know what I've been through, Izuku replied, calmly. My life isn't, as perfect as you might think. Enlighten me, then. The taller teen was clenching his jaw shut, a vein visibly pulsing on his forehead, just above the scar over his left eye. Izuku was silent for a few moments, contemplating whether he should tell the truth. For some reason, he found himself wanting to share his story. He felt like he could trust Shinso, who had been through similar hardships because of something he couldn't control. He figured that, if anyone in this stupid school could understand what he had been through, it would be him. I was quirkless, he finally admitted. Shinso was, understandably, surprised. His beautiful, amethyst eyes were wide open, and Izuku felt he could stare at them for hours. The green-haired teen cleared his throat and turned his attention to his fidgeting hands. For 14 years, I was quirkless. My quirk manifested late. Right before the entrance exams, to be exact. Izuku's eyes darted to the other boy's face, meeting Shinso's impossibly wide ones. The taller teen seemed like he had a million questions, but made no move to interrupt. I know what it's like to be discriminated against because of your quirk, or, well, lack thereof. I've been beaten, tossed around, ridiculed, bullied in every way you can think of. I've been told to kill myself, by all my classmates, even a few teachers insinuated it. I've been left bleeding on the ground, forced to do my own stitches at 10 years old, because the school nurse didn't care enough to treat a quirkless kid. Izuku took a deep breath, refusing to let his tears spill. Shinso wasn't faring much better. Silent tears were once again streaming down his pretty face, no matter how much he tried to wipe them off. My dad, Izuku bit his lip. He hadn't told anyone about this. He has a fire-breathing quirk. He had used it on me a few times, before he decided that having a quirkless son just wasn't worth his time and left us, me and my mom. Izuku's hand absent-mindedly ran over a particular burn scar on his left forearm. It was faded enough to not be noticeable, but Izuku could vividly remember when and how he got it, even though he was only 4 at the time. My childhood friend turned on me, when his quirk manifested, and mine didn't. The bitterness was obvious in his tone. He would berate me, beat me, use his quirk on me, you name it. The funny thing is, I hadn't realized he wasn't my friend anymore until last year, when he told me to jump off a roof and pray for a quirk in the next life. Izuku let out a heartless laugh at the memory. Shinso, on the other hand, looked furious. Izuku would, too, if someone told him they had been treated this way, especially by one they called a friend. So, yeah, I get it. I may not have been called a villain, but I've been told enough times that I was better off dead to know what discrimination is like. Oh, gods, I'm so sorry, Shinso whispered. I didn't know. I didn't mean. It's fine, Shinso-kun. Izuku gave him a wobbly smile. You couldn't have known. Still, I shouldn't have said, He made a vague gesture with his hand. It's okay, really. Silence engulfed them. Just like with Todoroki, it wasn't uncomfortable or unpleasant. They just coexisted, with the sounds of battle, present Mike's commentary, and the crowd cheering barely registering in their minds. I also wanted to apologize, Izuku blurted out. What for? Shinso wrinkled his nose and cocked his head in confusion. He looked like a cat. A tired, tall, purple cat. Izuku averted his eyes as he felt heat rising to his cheeks. For our match, you didn't get to show off your abilities, Izuku explained, playing with the hems of his gym uniform sleeves. You want to be a hero, right? I did, Shinso said woefully. I'm not so sure anymore. Oh, Izuku lifted an eyebrow. This sounded vaguely familiar. I've always wanted to be a hero, ever since I was a kid, despite everyone telling me someone with a villainous quirk, like me, could never be a hero. The tired teen started picking on his nails. Izuku hummed, but otherwise didn't interrupt. When I didn't pass the practical exam, seeing how combat-oriented it was, I started having doubts. I got placed in general education, and when everyone found out about my quirk, it was like middle school all over again. Another mirthless laugh escaped his lips. I thought UA would be different. I guess I was wrong. Yeah, Izuku understood. If he hadn't inherited one for all, and had gotten in UA quirkless, assuming he would even be allowed to, he was pretty sure he would have been treated just like in Aldera. Aoyama has fainted. Ashido advances to the second round. Present Mike's voice echoed through the stadium, signaling the end of the second match. Izuku planned on taking notes on his classmates during their fights, but considering Shinso looked much calmer than before, talking to him was definitely worth it. He wasn't sure why, but he would do it again in a heartbeat. I should go, Shinso interrupted his thoughts. He got up and walked up to his locker. You won't stay. Watch the other matches. Izuku got up as well, but made no move to stop him. Nah. He started changing out of his uniform, but Izuku noticed he hesitated when he went to get his arms out of his sleeves. Izuku turned the other way to give him some privacy, gaining a soft, "Thank you," from the other boy. Will you be going home, then? Even though he couldn't see him, he could feel the taller teen stiffen. Well, wasn't that a red flag? I guess. Shinso didn't elaborate, and Izuku got the message. I will head back, then. Izuku went to walk away, but turned to face the other boy, who had already changed into his school uniform, bar the tie. Do you want to exchange numbers? Shinso froze, his tired eyes widening slightly. Sure. A hint of a smile crossed his lips, and Izuku could feel the blush creeping up his cheeks. He suddenly felt the need to see it more often, to be the reason Shinso smiled. He couldn't help but smile back. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.